Hello, Benchmates. Santa here. This is Beyond the Box Art, the official podcast of the International Plastic Modelers Society UK. Ho, ho, ho. Please welcome your host, Brownie Claus, and his not-so-little helpers, Bargain Boulders, Decorator Dan, Hoarder Mark, Border Martin, Nautical Nevs, and Superlative Spencer. And we are joined this festive episode by an author, teacher, and modelling maestro, the one and only Geoff Coughlin from ScaleModellingNow.com. As a bonus, this episode we've squeezed in Ethan Goodbody, straight from BBC One's The Marvellous Miniature Workshop. Proof elves aren't the only master builders.
Hi Benchmates, welcome back to episode 17 of Beyond the Box Art, and it's our Christmas episode, where the sprues are frosty, the stash is bulging, and the studio smells suspiciously of mince pies. And this one's a festive cracker. We're joined by Geoff Coughlin from Scale Modelling Now, a man who's forgotten more about modelling than most of us will ever know, and who still somehow finds time to build properly, even in December. We're also welcoming Ethan Goodbody, fresh from BBC One TV's The Marvellous Miniature Workshop, proving that scale modelling can make it into primetime television. And then, things get interesting. We shine a Christmas ballwood spotlight on the IPMS Farmer branch, a club with a story that starts sensibly, takes a sharp turn somewhere near the bar, and ends up in places we genuinely didn't expect. As for the crew, it's been a challenge to be fair. We've been trying to keep Boulders away from the mince pies, Nevs away from the tinsel, Dan from weathering the decorations, and Mark from adding anything new to the stash until January. So far, mixed results. Of course, we've still got all the usual festive nonsense, stash inflation, bench chat, questionable purchasing decisions, strong opinions, and absolutely no self-control whatsoever. So grab a brew, clear the bench, switch the airbrush off so you don't get overspray on the fairy lights. This is episode 17 of Beyond the Box Art, and it starts now. Right then, Benchmates, we've got a full house this evening almost, but for this episode I am joined by Boulders.
Season greetings all.
Mark.
Happy Christmas, everybody.
Spencer.
Evening.
Nevs.
Hi, everyone.
Martin.
Happy holidays.
Dan.
Hello, Benchmates.
And we're also joined by our guest for this episode, Geoff Coughlin.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, so let's start like we normally do with what we've got on the bench. So, Mark, what have you got at the moment?
Zero. Nothing's changed from the last episode. The only thing I have dug out is a Tamiya kit I've got to do for the Bolton show coming up in January, which I'm going to do a Grumman F4F Wildcat because I've been listening to a book on the Pacific War, so it's kind of inspired me to do one of them.
And obviously, our Benchmates can't actually see what you've got on the bench, but there seems to be some books lying around as well.
Yeah, well, it was a little bit of homage to the two of them on here. I've got Mr. Coughlin's Phantom book and his Hornet and his F-190 there, and I've got a couple from Spence. I think I've got a full set over there, otherwise it'd be all over the place. They'd be everywhere. Cover the wall.
Excellent.
I think I've got all three of Geoff's books.
Well, thank you very much.
How many have you done, Geoff? It must be more than that.
Yeah, it's about 14 now, I think. Something like that. Yeah.
I'm not going to say any of these were in the pound bin.
Yeah, probably something like that. Bargain. That's all I can say, Mark.
Okay then, Mark, what have you been spending your cash on?
Ooh, a bit disappointing this week, really. I had my usual trip over to Halifax, and I got the new ICM D217 M1 at 48th, and I picked up a Marauder Mark III, the one Spencer's done, but in British markings.
Oh, okay.
So that, and then I bought a couple of new tools. I bought this is a massive, I wasn't expecting it to be this big, it's a sonic knife.
Right.
That's on. You can't hear it. It's absolutely silent. But if you touch it, oh, dear me.
You can hear the vibration.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's hot knife through butter on plastics.
You're going to carve your turkey with that, Mark.
Well, you'll be there all week. You'll be there till next Christmas. Let's put it that way.
It's like a lightsaber, isn't it?
Stay for the veal.
Yeah, and
So it's the size of a lightsaber, but it's got a scalpel blade on the end of it.
The 2-in-1. What more can I say? 2-in-1.
Yeah, it is absolute. When you're cutting through, like if you've got something that you've got to be a little bit gentle with, you don't get your knife on it. This, you don't. There's no pressure. Just touch it and you're through. It's brilliant. Cuts anything.
Perfect for 3D printed parts, eh?
Well, that's one of the little things. Yeah. The other thing I got,
Seen quite a few adverts on Facebook for that now, all of a sudden.
same company, is a little drill, but the downside with it is it doesn't fit the drills I've bought. I thought, I'll get myself a new drill. The shank on, the ones that we get where you've got the wider bit at the bottom, generally they're about 2.5, 2.35. These are 2.3, and that couple of points makes all the difference. So it's quick release, do that, slip them in, boom, away you go. The only downside with it, again, which I didn't realise, it's too fast. It's ridiculously fast.
That's the advantage of the ammo driller that I got, the T800. You can actually drop it down from 3,500 RPM to 100 RPM. Even at 100, it's a little bit fast, but it certainly takes the wrist pain out of, or repetitive wrist, of actually doing it by hand.
Yeah, well, I have the Proxon, and when you get it, it comes with a standard transformer. But if you buy the one with a speed dial on it as well, we've also got a speed dial on the drill itself, which you turn all the way down, which takes you to about, maybe, 1,000 revs per minute. On the other controller, you can turn it right down to about 300, 400 revs. So you're good for polishing, and you're not going to be burning anything with that.
The other good thing with the ammo T800 is it comes with another chuck, so you can actually put the small drill bits in. Ah, okay, fair enough. Okie dokie. Right, in that case, move on to boulders.
Nothing on the bench at the minute. I've had a bit of a tidy up in the man cave, which has took me longer than I expected. So decluttering, getting rid of shelf of dooms, I've just binned them.
And your stash behind you seems to have changed from aircraft to ships at the top.
Yep, it has indeed. Yeah, so I'm going to be doing ships for a bit. Whilst I was hunting, or while I was cleaning, I actually found my 3D printed Mandalorian helmet, which somebody did for me. So I'm going to have a play around with that and see what colour scheme I can do it in.
So you're going to go to the cinema next year with that on?
Got to put his popcorn somewhere.
Yeah, actually, yeah. I've got an idea to put some electronics into it so it gives me a bit of night vision so I can actually see through it.
I'll pass it over the counter and say, fill that up with popcorn, spare the bucket.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't get much in it, in all honesty. But yeah, didn't even think about going to the cinema there. But I'll have to go on my own legs. I don't think the other Apple will do it.
Wear it at the Bolton show.
That's not a bad idea, that Spets, because then when people say, where's the show manager? Just say, look for the bloke with a Mandalorian helmet on.
Just look for the slightly chubby Mandalorian.
But talk about the Christmas spirit. Anyway, moving on then. So what have you been spending your cash on?
Nothing. I haven't spent a penny. Obviously, I spent a bit at Telford like everybody else has. There's just nothing floating me boat, as the
Oh dear.
naval pun is.
Moving on swiftly then. Spencer, what have you got on your bench? At least someone to be doing some modelling, I hope.
Yes. Currently, I've got a Tamiya 48 scale Messerschmitt 109 G6 that I'm building.
Oh, okay.
And that I've decided, for reasons I don't fully understand myself, I've decided to build as I would have built it in 1982. So this thing is being built without any form of weathering. There's no washes on it. There's essentially no dry brushing on it. So it's being built the way that when because we're all of us very similar age.
Does that mean you're brush painting it as well?
No, there's a limit. I'm not a monster.
I was using a roller in 82.
I was probably using some emulsion that I found in my mum's garage. So it's being airbrushed because I'm not a lunatic. You've got to have something decent at the end of this thing. It's being painted in flat colours. So I'm not going to be washing it. I'm not going to be weathering it. It's going to be the way that guys would have built for magazines back in the early 80s, when you'd see builds being created by Roger Chesnut, Joe Sacchi or Ray Rimmel. They didn't really do any of that kind of thing. And I thought it'd be an interesting exercise, kind of technical exercise, really, to see how difficult it would be to make something interesting without all of the flourishes, without all of the normal stuff that we're all used to doing. I haven't built a model like this for about 40 years, I was thinking, because we're in 2025 now. Probably started weathering in about 85. So I haven't really built anything like this. And it's got its own challenges, and I'm quite enjoying it. The challenges being that you have to be ultra neat all the time. So you can't make mistakes, because if you make mistakes, you've got to touch them up. The touching up has got to be as good as the previous steps. Can't hide anything really. Can't put any layers over weathering. It's an interesting experience, but I have to say that I'm really enjoying it. I'm also doing something I almost never do. I'm following the instructions.
Steady.
Going back to the lunacy of these things, I've decided I would follow the instruction sheet and paint as I went along. Normally I build all of the sub-assemblies and then paint everything all in one go and then bring it all together. But this one I'm actually following the instructions and painting it step by step. And I'm finding the whole process really relaxing, sort of
Cathartic?
yes, really cathartic. I get really stressed about weathering models. I'm like the Keith Moon of model making. I have to remind myself how I've built and painted something each time I do it. Like Keith used to go on tour with The Who and they'd have to remind him where the drum fills were. I have to do that. Every time I build a piece of armour, I think, how did I do the dust layers last time I did one of these? So that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment. It's just an exercise. I've only got a couple of weeks to do this thing at the moment. It's going really well. It also means that I'm able to test some products I've not used before. On the Spitfire that I've just completed, I tested MRP paints, which I'd never used before. On this thing, I'm testing SMS paints, which I've never used before. So I'm seeing how those two ranges of paints fit in with the normal nonsense that I use and how they kind of work. I'm finding that an interesting exercise as well. It's a bit of a learning curve, really.
So what's your preference out of the two?
I like
Both good, smell different.
I like the smell of them. They do smell nice, don't they?
We're all junkies.
We are sort of paint junkies, really.
We're all modelling junkies, paint junkies. Just love the smell.
Here's the thing with those two paint ranges. I like the pigmentation in the SMS paints, but I like the viscosity of the MRP paints. If you could get somewhere that was slightly in the middle of both of them, if that makes sense, so that you had the MRP paints closer in viscosity to the SMS paints and the pigmentation being the thing, you'd almost have the perfect paint. SMS say you can use the paints, but they don't need to be thin. I found that to get the precision I want, I've had to thin them very slightly just to loosen them up a touch. Overall, I think they're comparable ranges, really. Interesting ranges.
What have you used for thinning them, Spence?
I put just a couple of drops of Tamiya lacquer thinner in. You could probably use Mr. Colour, really. But I used just a couple of drops of the levelling thinner with the orange cap rather than the yellow. Just a couple of drops of that. This model's going to have mottling on the sides, so I think I'm going to need to thin it to get the mottles the way that I want them to be. It means as well taking the air pressures down really far. If you get these paints really thin, MRP, you can get incredibly fine lines if you take it below 10 psi, which I don't normally do. I usually spray at about 20 psi. But take it down to 10 psi and then spray and take the cap off so that you've got the needle exposed and then get really close in. The one thing I do like about them, they've got a beautiful sheen when you paint with them. They've got this kind of really nice satin finish. But also they dry ultra fast as well. It's extraordinary how quick. You just blow the airbrush over the top of them and you can see them drying underneath it, so you can build the layers up. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. A Messerschmitt 109 using paints that I've not used before and techniques that I have used before. Because I guess this project, these techniques that I'm using on this project, I would imagine all of us at some point have built a model in this way before we all sort of went down the path of weathering. So yeah, good fun, really enjoyable. Whether I do it again?
And how are you managing with the squeezy glue? Remember the old break the end off it and...
The Brit fix.
Once it's coming, it's never going to stop.
I'm thinking next year, what I'm thinking of, my mate Harris, if I can digress very slightly for 2 minutes. Mate Harris, when we went to October, we were having a chinwag about painting a model and how these days you don't have to mix colours. You can buy every colour you want. He said we should pick a model kit and build and paint it, but we're only allowed to use 4 primary colours. Yellow, red, blue, black and white, plus a gloss varnish and a flat varnish, but they don't count. You have to mix every single colour on the model from those colours. So basically it's like a printer would print, and overlay the colours. And I'm thinking of suggesting to Harris, although I'm not sure that he'll go with this because he wasn't completely convinced about the idea of the 5 colours, that we use tube glue as well. That would be really funny, with a screw top lid and all of that kind of stuff. You have to use a Stanley knife or a pair of your mum's nail clippers to clip the parts off. Next year, I'm planning at some point, all joking aside, that I want to build a model and paint it and not use an airbrush at all, and build and paint the whole thing using paintbrushes the way that I used to. With the modern paints, AK3G paints, they self-level beautifully, don't they? And if you thin them with...
So do the MRP acrylics.
Are they the same? Yeah. I think that might be an interesting kind of experience. Anyway, I went off on a tangent there. So yeah, a Messerschmitt 109. That's what I'm building at the moment.
Okay, Nevs, what have you got on your bench?
I'm still working away on the Mirage hobby, the 70-second scale Grant. You've got all the little shovels and pickaxes and things, and they've all got ridiculous runners attached. So despite best attempt at surgery, they're all going to pieces. So having to glue them all back together.
You need a sonic knife.
I said when I started it, it's a fantastic kit. It really goes together. The instructions are awful, and the fit on a lot of the parts isn't the best. It's got a little thread of photo etch, and I've used it so far, which is fine. But it basically makes the doors 3D behind the hatch. So you've got all of the handles and the locking mechanisms. You then don't want to shut it all up because it won't fit in. And then B, you've gone to the effort of putting all these parts on. So I might have to do it with the one door open, in which case it's now a diorama, isn't it? So that'll be interesting.
Fair enough. And what have you been spending your cash on?
The only thing I bought the Spitfire, the Blackpool Illuminations boxing. I told myself I was never going to buy it until I'd actually been up to Blackpool to see Spitfire roundabout, which I have. And I'm glad I went in the day because there's no lighting now. So you won't be able to see it if you visit during the illuminations. But yes, been up to Spitfire roundabout and I've bought the box. So even though it costs twice as much as a normal Spitfire Mark V, it has got the unique Progress 3 markings. So that'll be interesting.
Did you go to the Spitfire Museum at Blackpool Airport while you were up there?
It's shut until March next year. They've got a bit of work going on. When I was at Blackpool Airport, you could see the wings of the Spitfire propped up by the hangar. You don't realise how big the wings actually are until you see them like that. I always thought the Hurricane looked huge when you see it, but even the Spitfire wings, they had one, it looked maybe a Mark V or Mark 9 wing, but it was massive, absolutely massive, and it's just the one side propped up against the hangar. So whatever they're doing over the winter, obviously that's part of it.
Is that the kit that comes with a 144 scale donkey with a bloke pulling it on the beach? A couple of drunks looking over one of the walls.
Yeah, that must be the other special edition that you've got. No, it doesn't.
Oh dear. Okay then, moving on. Martin.
Currently building the Maschinen Krieger vignette. It's going to be a scene with this machine cracked open and a skeleton hanging out of it and a young girl playing a violin soulfully in the background. And I've been painting that figure. It's actually a 3D printed figure I got from a guy in South Korea. It's beautifully printed. I just had a 30-hour layover as a flight attendant and I painted it during that. But I'm currently, because I'm going away on trips so much, I'm trying to take stuff with me that I can work on. The problem is with each project is it gets to a point where it's too big or too fragile and I have to move on to another project so that I've got something to take with me, which I'm about to do again. So it means I've got multiple things on the go. I am also working long-term on a large diorama of a French church during D-Day with 101st Airborne figures going by it. I'm working my way through all of those figures. I've done the US figures. I've got to do a few more French civilians. So those I'll be taking on the road with me. Those are the main projects I've got. I've got one other thing, which is called a Juggernaut, and it's a sci-fi figure. He's kind of part cyborg, huge belly with splits in it and wires and stuff coming out of him. So it'll be a fun thing to do. That's what I'm working on.
Okay. And what have you been spending your cash on?
So there's a company called B&L in Vietnam who do 3D printing and they do lots of conversion stuff, a lot of Vietnam War-centric stuff. Currently, he's doing a monitor. So it was the American Brown River Navy, something like that. They had a lot of specialized river craft that they used in the Mekong Delta and those areas. He's doing a lot of that stuff. The PIBA and the PBR, that I'm using the Tamiya kit for that, and I've got figures from Paracel, I think. But what I've got from him now is a conversion set to turn an M54 truck into a Vietnam gun truck, because the convoys started getting knocked out in Vietnam by the Viet Cong. So they decided to up armor a bunch of trucks. This was something that was done in country. It wasn't done in factories or anything. And they just got huge slabs of armor and stuck them on the back of these trucks. They robbed miniguns and stuff off crashed helicopters and 50 cals. These things were bristling with guns. So when they had a convoy, if it got attacked, they would race to where the attack was, and it was maximum firepower in a minimum amount of time. These things would pour huge amounts of lead into the forest, into the jungles. I'm building one of these. You can buy them off the peg. I know the other companies do them, but because they were so specialized, because they were made in the bases, they vary so much. So I'm doing the version that he's producing, and it's all 3D printed parts, incredibly well detailed. The minigun, the 50 cals, radios inside, and it also comes with a crew. And the crew are 4 guys, mostly shirts off, holding weapons, and a 5th guy taking a photo of them. So they'll be in front of the vehicle. The last thing it's added is a dog with his leg up having a leak. So I'm going to have that next to the truck, and I'm going to have to paint a little gloss section on the tire to make that work.
Oh, fantastic. Okie dokie. Right then, Dan.
Back on the big B17 after a short building hiatus on the Gecko 135th Land Rover. I'd had to get the Land Rover so far and then stop because I needed some paint. I need to do a base coat of aluminium after speaking to you from Black Hat, his reductive chipping technique, which I'm going to do. I needed to get certain paints for it. And the Land Rover, I'm not going to do it in a military green, which would be a bronze green. I'm going to do it in pastel green series Land Rovers. It was an option in the 50s when you ordered. So I ordered pastel green from a company in Spain, and it was absolutely nowhere near the colour that I need it to be. So I tried the other company in Spain, our friends at Ammo, and their light grey green is a perfect scale for pastel green. But I've got to put the sort of aluminium coat on first, and then hairspray or chipping fluid, whichever, and then this stuff over the top of it. So I've had to wait to get stuff to arrive. And I'm also on the B17. Now, we've kissed and made up because I was having serious fit issues with the big 148 HK/Edward bloody 100th B17. I think I spoke about it before, where I wasn't too happy with some of the location points of the bulkheads and whatnot. There's a lot in there, as you all saw. You've got the rear gunner's part, you've got the radio room, you've got the bomb bay, and then you've got the cockpit. And that's a lot to get in and to get the 2 halves sandwiched up. I think now I have to admit that it probably was me rather than the kit. I couldn't get it to go together as well as I wanted. But after a bit of swearing and colourful language and a bit of persuasion, I finally got it there, and I've test fitted 100 times the other bits that need to go on the nose section and the top part of the fuselage, sort of from the cockpit back, because that sits in, and it all will fit okay. So I'm over that hurdle now. So hopefully I can, because as I always say, I have to do my airbrushing on weekends. I can get some sponge in the gaps and get some primer on it and get some colour on it soon, which I think I'm going to need about 2.5 litres to get that thing covered because it's blimmin' massive. My son came in, he went, "Dad, is that the wing?" I went, "Yeah." He said, "That's nearly as big as one of your usual planes." So yeah, it's a real whopper, but looking forward to carrying on with it.
Is it going to be olive drab?
Yeah, it will be olive drab. I know when Luke did his, he actually cheated and rattle canned the grey underneath and the drab on top, and then went over the top of that with his airbrushing just to get the coverage. You'll end up going through the bottles like nobody's business. And I'm not sure, I've got a 0.35. I don't think that will hose it on quite wide enough what I would want it to. So I may have to take it out into the garage and get the actual proper spray gun out on it.
It's actually making me think about, I've got one of those kits in the loft that I bought. So it's a bit of forewarned, is kind of forearms really. I do fancy building one.
Spoke to Boulders about it, and we think it's scaled
Down from the 32nd scale.
So with the walkways in the B17s, where you've got 2 walkways either side of a bulkhead, they have to share the locating hole, which if that had been a Tamiya kit, they would have had a separate in the middle for the other walkway or the floor section. Yeah, it's a good kit. It's not blow your socks off. It's a very dear subject to me, the Mighty Eighth and the bomb groups, especially being where I am. I just wanted it to be, it sat in my stash for a long time before I decided to do it. Sort of a little bit disappointed, not quite as what I thought it was. But that's modelling, I'm afraid. They're not all amazing, are they?
Well, I had sort of a slightly crazy idea. I bought all three. So I bought that one, I bought the monogram one I got off eBay, and then Revell reissued their B17F, which is essentially the monogram kit. They were both made from the same set of design drawings, sort of intermatch, really, the parts. And then do sort of 3 different builds of B17s until I realised I had no space to put one of them, let alone 3. Glenn Ashley gave me a conversion set to do a 100 group one. I think it's for the HKM kit, actually, which would be black with a brown and green camouflage on the top. I think it's got the bulge under the nose. Is it like the radar underneath the nose?
Be a Pathfinder. Would it be a Pathfinder?
Yeah, pathfinding. And I kind of like the idea of doing that. And I keep looking at the kit. When I built them, it was like, yeah, I really want to do the B17 now, but I'm trying to decide what to do. But if I build that kit, I really want to do a natural metal one. It's good to know where the issues are before I start that.
I've never built one before. If I was doing it again, I'd go, right, I know what you're up to. You have that foresight, don't you? I think it was probably more me, the faults, rather than the kit. But the kit is to blame a little bit as well. Shared.
Is there some areas of the instructions that are a little bit lacking, should we say?
Yes, they are. They're the CAD style 3D image. And it's what I really don't like is when it has a really long arrow telling you, and then it stops about that far away from where it's got to go. And you go, well, no, that doesn't help, does it? You need to figure out the rest of it for yourself. But
more of a suggestion than an aid.
Sometimes, yeah.
If that's you, we'll move on to Geoff. What have you got on your bench at the moment?
Okay, hi. What I've got on the bench at the moment is I've probably got 2 or 3 things. I usually have 2 or 3 things of one sort or another, although I've been trying religiously not to do that because I think there's a very different mindset that I need to bring from one project to another. Oh, admittedly, at the moment, they are all aircraft. They tend to be, but not always. So I've got the Zukimura, the BF109G4 in 32nd scale on the bench at the moment, which I was lucky enough to get a fairly early sample of. I mean, I've built quite a lot of Zukimura kits now. I mean, I like them a lot. They're unique in how they go about quite a lot of their construction and design. Some of you might be familiar with things like they often include clear parts, so you can display the model when you finish it with all sorts of the interior framing and detailing show. I'm not a great fan of that. That's not how I like to model, so I wouldn't do that. But sometimes you've got the straightforward plastic bits as well. So sometimes there's duplications. The good news with this kit is that it's all just straight plastic. There's no clear parts other than the bits that are supposed to be clear, like the canopy. I just posted a picture earlier tonight of the model largely built. And it's a tremendous kit. I mean, I've got to be honest, it is a tremendous kit. The fit has been flawless to this point. Really good. But it's very unusual. If you've not built one before, you might think, well, blimey, what on earth have they done here? For instance, they do give you plenty of detail you won't see on the finished model. So that's the first thing to decide. For instance, all the detail, all the radio compartments, stuff like that lives in the back end. You get a separate door, so you can peer inside and you might just see a bit of radio equipment, but there's all sorts of other stuff in there you won't see. And I did have it on display at Telford. Some people would drop by and it was good to chat to all sorts of people, just showing what was on offer. I've moved on from there and I've done the wings now. Interesting enough, you don't just get a top and a bottom and perhaps a spar. You get most of the detail in the wing and you get at least 2 or 3 different panels to fit onto the top and underneath that make up the wing, separate wing tips and so on. And I've got to say that it was a definite, oh my God, it's surely not. This is just never going to fit. But it does. It just does, and it's an absolute dream. Having built 1 or 2 of their kits in the past, just make sure you absolutely dry test. We've been hearing about that already. Test fit, well, that's pretty standard for most modelers with most stuff. It's especially true with Zukimura because the tolerances are very tight. So you've got to make sure that's exactly right. So clean up the parts well, and maybe even sometimes if you've put paint on a joining edge, then maybe just quickly lose that before you put it all together. But yeah, it looks the part. I think the big thing with this, which is not like me at all, is I generally like to have stuff closed up so you can see the lines, preserve the lines of the actual aircraft. Nothing better than that. However, with this, of course, you've got the completely detailed Daimler-Benz 605 engine, or it is, which is extraordinary. That was the very first task you do. And there must have been, I don't know, 10, 15 pages worth of instruction book telling you exactly how it goes together. But this is the difference between them and some of these other kit manufacturers. We just talked a minute ago about instruction sheets. It's absolutely perfect. It's on the money. You get multiple little pictures, multiple little drawings that show you precisely where each bit needs to go. There's no guesswork about it. And for me, that's worth its weight in gold, because it means that whole build process is enjoyable. And God, that's a big part of this. Whatever we do in this hobby, you've got to have fun. You've got to enjoy it. You know, it shouldn't be this over sort of thinking sort of trauma. I think sometimes you guys talking and you think, geez, do you actually get enjoyment out of doing this? I absolutely do. I will not and have never built a model that I didn't want to build ever.
Geoff, when you come across a kit that you are struggling, what do you do? Are you the sort of person that might bin it and say, oh, you know, life's too short to carry on with that? Or do you just dig your feet in and persevere?
Mark, that's a great question. I've got to be honest. There is only one kit I have ever failed to build, and I've built hundreds over the years. But I only say that to answer the question. Generally, I'll persevere. I'll try and get to the finish line, because I think, Christ, I put all this work in. I'm not going to let this bloody thing beat me. So what was it? It was the sodding Kitty Hawk Jaguar, Sepcat Jaguar. What a heap of crap that is. It's just the worst kit I've ever come across in my entire life.
I've got a Roden HU 111 of mine that you can finish for me, if you don't mind.
In fact, if anyone looks in ScaleModellingNow, that build did start in there. And all you'll see is a nice little picture that says crashed and burned on it. It was just, you know, you win some, you lose some. But on the converse, so you look at the magnificent tooling of the more recent one they released last year. I did that in 2 weeks when it came out. I just enjoyed every second of it. It's a great kit, lovely kit. And now you got all the aftermarket stuff for that. I love the Jaguar. It was a grave disappointment when Kitty Hawk decided to do it. But everything was wrong about it. Ridiculous instructions. We were talking earlier about instructions. It's one of the biggest bugbears. I did a big thing on it in the magazine about the whole thing about instructions. If you follow the instructions, you're probably going to come a cropper. It is my general experience of modelling. So why on earth? What's that all about? However, people at Airfix, pretty good. Really pretty good these days. Zucchini, very good. Wingnut Wings back in the day, exceptional off the scale. You know, if you follow and do precisely what they say, particularly with Zucchini, particularly with somebody like Wingnut Wings, who's no longer there, you end up a decent model, assuming, you can do it justice and you don't cock it up like we all have from time to time. But the bottom line is it's great. But some of the other manufacturers, you follow instructions. I mean, it's utter madness. I remember reading one, it was an F-14 Tomcat, and I always remember, I think it may have even been Hasegawa or somebody, I don't know who it was, but it basically had you build the whole front of the nose section, add the undercarriage, add the canopy, and then join it to the rear fuselage.
There was a very similar thing, Geoff. Joe Zaki was reviewing the then new monogram Mirage 2000 when that came out in about 1985. They did the one, you might remember, it was white with red and blue trim on it. And he described how absurd the instructions were, because the monogram instructions had you build the entire wing, upper and lower surfaces, undercarriage, all the stores and everything before you glued it to the fuselage. And on the other side of the coin, they had you build the whole of the fuselage with the nose gear in place and the canopy and all of the cockpit and everything. And you brought these two sections together, which is fine for anybody that's never built a monogram kit, because the idea that those two sections were ever going to go together and not be requiring a degree of filling and sanding, and I'm probably being generous there, I would think. But yeah, some of the instructions are absolutely absurd. Did you ever think how this model was going to go together?
I think the problem is, I think I've slightly digressed the conversation here, but I think one of the biggest problems is, I'm quite sure, I'm guessing now, because this is the only explanation I can come up with. You have people who are great at doing instruction sheets, who are given the product or given the parts, and they produce some instruction sheets, but those are the model builders. Never shall actually anybody who can model have any input into the instructions, because anyone who would never suggest that. It's patently absurd. Talking about the current project, this Zucchini 109, it's quite self-evident that everybody is an integral part, almost like a little family really, producing the product. To be fair, some of the early ones weren't that clever. I did push-pull type thing early on. I had no idea what it was. One of the early Raiden 48 scale things, which was poor.
any of the more recent models in recent years from that manufacturer have been getting better in terms of fit, design, and all the rest of it. And the instructions are great as a seller. Follow it and you won't have a problem.
That's one advantage with Qatari, with Mark actually designing the instruction sheets. He is a modeler. So you've got the expertise of Mark and the team who know what they're talking about and looking at ways of making enhancements to the cockpit of an aircraft, shall we say, like the 30-second spit where you can actually put the control runs if you want to. But what you can actually see of the control runs when it's in is so minuscule, you just start to question, do I bother? Don't I? But for completeness, and you can, if you actually put your head in a certain angle, see where the control runs are. So I did do it, and I must admit, I'm really pleased that I did. It's a case of, it's someone who knows what they're talking about has actually come up with this instruction sheet.
Yeah.
And it does make a difference, as you say. It really does.
I can't really understand why it even happens that you've got instructions that aren't really on the money, because it must cost these companies large sums of money in terms of the R&D, producing the product. And then you get this kind of almost third-rate instruction sheet, which is going to ruin the build experience for the buyer. That's not good business in my world. That just would be a bizarre thing to do. You know, it cannot be that expensive to produce a half-decent set of instructions that's going to really enhance the build experience. The whole package is one that a modeler's going to love. Whereas if you've got people saying, yeah, then plastic's all right, but Christ, you know, because what I worry about, if more than I really worry about it, I suppose, but well, kind of taxes my brain from now and again, is I wonder, it's fine all very well me sitting here and maybe one or two others around the table. We've got some experience to rely on. But where does it leave newer modelers or those returning to the hobby? I've always said that's a huge attraction for the modelling stuff we do. It's aimed at trying to help people get over some of these things so that you don't end up with, I remember doing that modelling, I'll come back to it. Imagine if you follow the instructions, have a horrendous experience, and then that goes in the bin or box. I think, well, I won't do that again. I'll go and do something else. I don't know, watch TV or film or something. You know, I think it's such a shame because, you know, we've been astonishing to know how many people the hobby's lost because of a bad experience or two like that.
Very valid point. Very valid. Okay, and what have you been spending your cash on?
Well, I spent most of the stuff by, but I thought 2026 is going to be the year of trying to do different things. So having been a die-hard aircraft modeler for all these years, I thought I would build a ship.
Oh, no.
That's the spirit.
Oh, you've opened a wound here.
Okay, I have done a couple way back. So,
Get in, Geoff. Get in.
Ooh, in with a dagger.
I'm so sorry. So what I've done is I came across Forart as a manufacturer. I know, bear in mind, you're talking to somebody who knows nothing about maritime modelling at all, nothing. However, I got a chance to look inside the box and I thought, Christ, this looks good. The plastic was really crisp. It included some photo etch rails. It had a 3D printed radar thingy that goes around on the top. I thought...
That's right. So it is a thingy. That's what they call it in real life.
I thought, but God, it was beautifully refined. I thought, this is it. This is going to be great. I will build it, and whatever happens, I'll build it.
What actually?
Oh, it's HMS Coventry. Yeah.
How are your eyes?
Well, I wear glasses now, as you can see. I haven't got any of the great big things, you know, that some guys use at the moment, thank goodness.
The Optivisor.
That's the one.
Is it 1/350th?
Yeah, 1/350th scale. Yeah.
Mark, it's the sister ship to what Wongi built for Telford.
Oh, is it? Right. Okay, yeah. It's a nice size.
Yes, yeah. But it just looks nice. So I thought, give yourself half a chance. So I thought, I'm not going to buy something that might be cheap, but tons of work. I've not got the energy for that, really. But I thought, I want to enjoy it. So this looked good. So that's what I spend my summer.
Are you doing it on a seascape or is it just going to go on a plank?
I'm always one to try and push the boat and do something different with the projects that I do. Some element of it is new. I've never done a seascape, but I'm going to give it a go. Nothing fancy, you know, waves everywhere and all that crap. That's got to be a dark art for people who are great at that. But for me, I thought at least put it on water. I don't know, maybe with a gentle turn.
It's a bit like figure painting for me.
Well, honestly, Mark, you never know what's around the corner. A few weeks ago, we lost my brother. He was 2 years older than me, and it was an absolute travesty and tragedy that he contracted stomach cancer and he died within a few weeks. So it made me think, you're only here once probably. You've no idea how many years you've got left. So I thought, try and do some of the things that you've been saying you're going to do for years. And I thought, no, I'm going to try something different. I even bought a motorbike. Went down to Access Models in Newark last week. I bought a motorbike as well, a Honda CB750F.
That's a beautiful bike as well.
Oh, what do I know about motorbikes? I know nothing about motorbikes. Well, I remember them back in the day, Spence, 70s, I think late 70s, around the 80s, 90s, something.
Yeah, beautiful bike. Yeah.
Remember seeing them, and I just thought, I remember seeing these around. Anyway, so I've got into that, and that's going quite well. It's quite fun.
I built the 12 scale one, and then I built the 900 version, which is the 6th scale one.
Oh, my God.
Elizabeth bought me the 6th scale one for a Christmas present. When you get bought a kit, you've got to build it out. You really.
Oh, yeah.
But I love building those motorbikes. They all laughed at me when I said I wanted to do a truck with a JCB on the back of it. And they thought I was crazy.
I didn't laugh. I was gobsmacked. That's what you came out with.
Yeah, they mocked.
Yeah, we thought it was great.
We were shocked.
But it was cool that you wanted to do something completely different.
The bottom line with this stuff is that I think sometimes just a change is as good as a rest.
Absolutely.
It can give you a great additional bit of mojo, a bit of a boost, re-engage kind of thing, just to try and do something that might break the kind of deadlock that sometimes we get stuck into.
I think this is why it's great that Martin mentioned he's doing Machining Krieger SF3.
I'm a firm believer that if you try different genres, you pick up different skills. I've never tried to pigeonhole myself. I've done MAK, aircraft, tanks, small ships, not just patrol boats. It all helps. When I first started, most of my info I got was from YouTube. So I was looking at the guys who did Warhammer, who did, every single genre I could find, and I picked up something for all of them. And like you say, if you start to get stale with one thing, rather than just abandon modeling, try something else.
Okay, well, with that, we will take a short break for some of our commercial sponsors.
Are you looking for top quality paints for your next project? Then look no further than the Scale Modeller Supply. Hi, I'm Scott, and as a passionate modeller myself, I've spent years creating the SMX product range, designing them specifically with a scale modeller in mind. We've worked extensively to develop our acrylic lacquer paint range to not only be airbrush ready straight out of the bottle, but also to be very easy to use so that anyone of any skill level can create professional results with minimal effort. Just give the bottle a good shake, pour into your airbrush and spray at 15 psi. So dive into your next project with confidence, knowing that you're backed by one of the finest hobby paints on the market. Head over to our website scalemodeller.com.au to check out our full range and to find your closest retailer.
Visit ScaleModelPodcast.com, your hub for the best scale modelling pods, because finding great content shouldn't take longer than hunting for lost photo etch.
Fishcop Models, elevating scale modeling to an art form. Experience highly detailed 3D printed upgrade parts that bring true authenticity to your builds. Creators of the acclaimed Rolls-Royce Merlin engine set for both the Kotari Spitfire and the Dambusters set for the Border Models Avro Lancaster. For bespoke design and printing, our service is as precise as it is personal, all at a reasonable price. Please take a look at our products on www.fishcopcompany.de. Shipping is available for all of our products worldwide.
Ho ho, hold on to your nippers. New kits are landing faster than reindeer on Christmas Eve. Welcome to the Stash Inflation Report.
Right then, Benchmates, yet again we have a bumper crop of announcements and releases. Plus, we have expanded the report to now include Gundam and Mecha releases with a new specialist to help us out. So onwards with the aviation section, and fair warning, this one's hotter than a log fire on Christmas Eve. First up, Armour Hobby are releasing a 172nd ME262A-1A, White 3. Verk number 500071, and this one comes with a cracking story attached. Built in late March 1945 at Messerschmitt Obertraubling plant, this aircraft went straight to 3rd Group Jagdgeschwader 7 right at the end of the war. On April the 25th, 1945, it took off from the Munich area, flown by 23-year-old Hans Guido Muttke. Running short on fuel, Muttke made an emergency landing at neutral Zurich-Dubendorf, where the aircraft was promptly interned. The jet was eventually returned to Germany in 1957, and today sits beautifully conserved in the Deutsche Museum in Munich, and is widely regarded as one of the best surviving Me-262s anywhere. The kit features amazing box art and includes 3 marking options, 2 wartime, 1 post-war. Planned release for this is the second half of January 2026, so not long to wait. Pilot replicas are releasing a 148th Saab SK60C, and as expected, this is shaping up to be a top-quality kit. You're getting superb surface detail, photo etch parts, and decals of 3 aircraft printed by Cartograph. The SK60C was the reconnaissance and light attack variant of the Saab 105, featuring an extended nose housing cameras and sensors. It could also carry 30mm Callan pods or a variety of rocket loads. Used extensively for reconnaissance, often tagging along with strike formations for post-attack photography, the type served from the early 1970s right through until its retirement in spring 2024. Popular, efficient and famously safe, a long-serving jet with serious modelling appeal. Now an interesting Cold War development from Kinetic. They've announced 2 new boxings of a 148th MiG-17F, both listed as completely new toolings. One in DDR, or East German markings, and one in US Air Force constant peg markings flown by the 4477th Test and Evaluation Squadron. For Cold War fans, the constant peg option alone is going to raise a few eyebrows and probably open a few wallets. That said, we do hope Kinetic's long promise and long overdue Fiat G91s and the Canadair CT114 Tutor make it to the shelves before this latest announcement leapfrogs them in the production queue. IBG are releasing a 172nd Supermarine Spitfire PR Type C, the Heston Special, 1940-41. If this is anything like IBG's recent Spitfire output, this will be an absolute gem. Elegant, niche, and perfect for anyone who loves the subtler side of the Spitfire's history. ICM are downscaling their big 135th CH-54A flying crane into 172nd scale to give us a far more shelf-friendly size. Still dramatic, still weird, and still guaranteed to stand out in any rotary wing collection. And finally, Miniart are releasing a 148th Focke-Wulf 190D-9 Mimitel production Jagdgeschwader 301 marked aircraft. If this is anything like their recent P-47, then frankly, we're in for something fabulous. And news hot off the press. Airfix have just released another surprise for 2025. A partial repop of the 2024 148th Bristol Bulldog, but this time as the Mark IIA variant. Extra parts are included in the box to produce the A, and the kit comes with 3 marking options. 23 Squadron RAF based at Kenley in 1932. The Sea Flight Commander's aircraft from 3 Squadron RAF during the Abyssinian Crisis, East Africa in 1935, and another Kenley-based aircraft, this time number 32 Squadron from 1935 also. Airfix kept this one well and truly under wraps, and if you're lucky, you should be able to get it in time to go under the tree. Receive it as a gift from the family. So, jets, props, reconnaissance oddities, Cold War classics, and a flying crane for good measure. So that wraps up the aviation releases for 2025. Now over to Nativity Nevs with the shipping forecast.
Okay, cheers, Brownie. Right then, Benchmates. And today we've got 2 releases that live at completely opposite ends of the how much bench space have I got left spectrum. SS Model are releasing pocket battleships that can actually fit in your pocket. SS Model have announced a trio of proper tiny warships in 1 to 2,000th scale, which is so small you'll be checking the carpet monster for your entire fleet. We're getting HMS Renown, the British battlecruiser, Admiral Hipper, the German heavy cruiser, and Deutschland, the famous pocket battleship that later got renamed Lutzow. Now here's the twist. These are all 3D printed waterline kits, but they're also advertised mounted on 3D printed bases. So it's not full hull, and it's not pure waterline either. It's this slightly unholy middle ground, a kind of Frankenstein compromise where the ship is saying, I'm waterline, but the base is saying, yeah, but I want to be a display pin. And I can already hear Wongi in the distance, clutching his sculpting paste and muttering something about seascape purity. But if you're a proper sea base purist, this is either a handy shortcut or an act of maritime mutiny. Still, for anyone who wants a whole Navy history lesson on a shelf the size of a Kit Kat, these are going to be dangerously tempting. And then, folks, wham, we're getting absolute scale whiplash. Gecko Models have leaked their intention to release a 1/35th US Navy fast patrol craft, the legendary Swift boat from the Vietnam era. Details are thin on the ground right now, but let's be honest. In 1/35th, this thing is basically a riverine diorama generator. You're instantly imagining muddy banks, jungle canopy, a dockside river supply scene, crew figures, ammo boxes, radios, all the clutter that makes a boat feel lived in. It's Cold War river warfare in plastic, and it's going to make a huge splash with anyone who loves that gritty, story-driven build. So here's Nevs' verdict. So on the one hand, we've got micro-navy fast builds, which are display-friendly and suspiciously base adjacent, but on the other, a full-on Vietnam icon that's going to eat your shelf, your wallet, and your weekend plans. Either way, Benchmates, the stash inflation is undefeated. And with that, for the first time ever in Beyond the Box Art's history, we have a feature of the latest Gundam releases. And for that, over to Shane, the head of the Gundam SIG in the UK.
Thanks, Nevs. Right then, Benchmates. Hold on to your hobby knives because Bandai has kicked off 2026 like it wants to personally ruin your financial health. We've got perfect grades, awakened units, and more glowing psycho frames. So let's dive in. First on the list, PG Unleashed 1/60th scale V Gundam. It's the anniversary beast. It's a limited production kit, retails at £450 plus delivery. Bandai celebrating 45 years of Gunpla by dropping a nuclear grade wallet wrecker. The PG Unleashed V Gundam. This thing is basically a masterclass in over-engineering. First ever full 1/60th three-dimensional internal structure for new. The ultimate unit system, meaning every limb feels like assembling an actual model suit. Thin funnels, rebuilt from the ground up. Frame moulded in metal colours. Multi-layered seals. Etched metal stickers. And proper metal parts for the thrusters and Vulcans. Psycho frame with secondary processing to simulate the growing activation effect. Accessories also include beam rifle, shield, 2 beam sabers, new hyper bazooka, alternate face parts, figures, wires, metal parts and support arm. Honestly, it's like Bandai emptied the whole warehouse into this box. It even includes a display base to hold this absolute unit with its fin funnels. Pre-orders are first come, first served, and Bandai UK reserves the right to delay or cancel allocations. So if you want it, run. The release window is between March and May 26, with the global release from January. But why stop there? Because next on the list is the PG Unleashed V Gundam LED unit from Bandai. This one retailing at another 150 plus delivery. So Bandai looked at the PG new and said, nice, now let's make it glow. So this dedicated LED system slots into the PG Unleashed and lights up the Psycho frame in either auto mode or manual mode. As you'd expect from Bandai, this thing is so well engineered it fits neatly into the PG base. Pure luxury add-on, this means every Gunpla fan will want to buy it anyway. Next up, we have the HG 144 GQ Endymion unit Awakened. Retailing at £25 plus delivery, you know this kit is serious when the name has a scream built into it. The Awakened Endymion unit lands with an opening closing head mechanism, PET plastic effect sheet for those anime style power up visuals, full articulation with dramatic poses, a solid loadout of weapons and joints, marking stickers included, the chaotic little beast for HG collectors with an easy slip into the basket accidentally. Next up, HG 144 Legend Gundam, now in Seed Action System Glory. Another one at 25 plus delivery. Bandai revisits Legend Gundam with modern engineering, giving it the Seed Action System for those trademark dynamic poses, movable GDU X5 assault beam, mobile gun, beam spike effects, retractable beam javelin grips, flexible backpack with multiple axis articulation, beam shield, and respectable spread of accessories. A proper upgrade that Seed fans will absolutely not skip. And now over to Dan with a festive AFV announcements.
Thanks, Shane. Good to have you on board. And today's stash inflation is a proper mixed bag. Bearded clandestine operators, winter war tank riders, and a civilian tow truck that's basically begging for a workshop diorama. And then a 1/16th chaffee that's so big it will need its own postcode. Black Snake have dropped a preview that sounds like it's been written by someone whispering into a headset. Codename Tora Bora. Set in the arid mountains of Afghanistan. Fortified hideouts, remote caves, and the grimy, gritty vibe of clandestine operations. They're teasing thick beards, local clothing, and much more, which is modelling speak for. We're about to give you lots of character, detail, and you're going to spend 4 evenings painting dust. No hard release details yet, but if this lands, it will be prime material for small vignette storytelling, modern gear with local textures, weathering, and fabric work for days. Mini Art are back doing what Mini Art do best, figures with a scene baked in. This next set gives you 4 figures plus weapons and equipment depicting US infantry hitching rides on armour during the Second World War. Because when the advances move in, you'll either keep up or you'll get left behind. And historically, it's spot on. Tank riders show up all over the place in period footage and photos, especially when units are pushing hard through towns and villages where infantry need to be right there for the nasty close-in work. This set absolutely screams for a foliage-draped Sherman, winter grime, frosted kit, and road fill. We've been awake for 2 days, faces. Basically, instant diorama. Next, a real curveball. Mini Art's G506 tow truck, but this time in civilian service, and they've sweetened the deal with extra workshop equipment to make it feel like a working vehicle rather than just a truck on a base. You're getting the tow truck and the towing gear, 4 coloured variants, photo etch included, updated parts, and the new CAD work shown in preview. And the subject itself is a classic, the Chevrolet G506 1.5 ton truck family, used during and after the Second World War, which means your build can go post-war recovery yard, depot workshop, backlot mechanics scene, or a war surplus turned civilian graft vibe. This one's a diorama builder's treat and the kind of kit that quietly turns into a whole project. And now, big boy time. Gecko Models 1/16th M24 Chaffee is the sort of kit that makes you slow down before you even open the bags because the scale forces you to actually take a good look at the vehicle. Highlights on this one include detailed fighting compartment interior, turned metal barrel with a rifled bore, workable suspension and workable track links, etched parts for crisp detail, a stowage set to break up the exterior, and decals for US Army and Free French Second World War vehicles. Historically, the Chaffee is a cracking subject, late war, nimble, and that lovely transitional feel between the Second World War and what comes after. It arrived to replace the M5 Stuart and brought better firepower and mobility to the light tank role, seen in combat in Europe from late 1944 onwards. This is a statement build, the kind that hogs the bench, hogs paint, and hogs the display shelf, but looks absolutely superb doing it. So there you go, benchmates. Modern clandestine figures for gritty storytelling, Second World War tank riders for instant action and atmosphere, a civilian tow truck that's diorama bait, and 1/16th Chaffee that's basically a full relationship commitment. Benchmates, hide your wallet. The stash inflation doesn't care about your New Year's resolutions.
Do you want cutting-edge detail for your kits? Then take a look at Phase Hanger Resin Accessories, run by USAF veteran Mike Reeves. With real-world aircraft experience as a crew chief, Mike knows exactly where accuracy counts. And today, he's bringing that knowledge to life with precision 3D printed parts. From seamless intakes and nozzles to dropped flaps, pods, pylons, and cockpit upgrades, Phase Hanger's prints capture the crisp edges and fine detail that limitations in injection molding just can't reproduce. From 1/72nd to 1/32nd scale, you'll find add-ons from Cold War classics to the latest frontline jets with frequent new additions to the product range. Every piece is designed by modelers, for modelers, and faithfully reproduced on state-of-the-art printers and shipped worldwide, and are ready to drop straight into your next build. With additions to the product line landing all the time, there's always something fresh to elevate your next build. Explore the full range at phasehangerresin.com and follow Phase Hanger on Facebook and Instagram for regular updates and inspiration. Phase Hanger Resin Accessories, authentic detail designed with a veteran's eye and available to modelers everywhere. Phase Hanger is a proud sponsor of the Beyond the Box Art podcast.
It's time for the IPMS UK Dispatches, your regular society spotlight on events, branches and SIGs.
So I'm now joined by Julian from IPMS Farnborough. How are you doing?
So far, so good.
Fantastic, that's good to know. So, your association with Farnborough goes back a little way.
It actually goes back a long way.
Okay.
Farnborough branch, the idea for a branch was floated in the IPMS magazine by Dickie Ward of Model Decor back in 1974. And we formally got the branch running in the beginning or the middle of 1975, and we've been going ever since.
That's a fair old stretch, isn't it?
We're feeling our age, or maturing, shall I put it that way?
Aging gracefully, or disgracefully, should we say?
Oh, with our lot, disgracefully. We have the advantage, ever since we opened, of always having a bar available.
Right, okay.
Which is a very good and very necessary item.
The branch is well and truly pickled then.
You better believe it.
Okay, so obviously 75, so that's about 10 years after IPMS first started, but
yes,
you must be one of the longest running branches in the country.
I think that's probably true. The honour ought to start with the London branch, because that's where everything started.
Yes.
Birmingham was pretty soon after that.
Mm-hmm.
And we started the Berkshire branch certainly late 60s, because I was secretary then, having been railroaded into the job.
You didn't put step backwards or fast enough.
Well, it was interesting because I actually got involved because the late Tony Willett gave me a model of the Aurora Bristol Fighter in 148 scale.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember that, you're going back a very long time. But it's in the days when national markings were etched into the plastic.
Yes.
That sort of era.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody, a friend of mine, had asked me to make a model for his father, who had served with 4 Squadron on the Northwest Frontier in the 1920s.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked around and thought, well, I'm not going to use the little Airfix one. It's too small. And even then I couldn't cope with things that small and that fiddly. So I thought, yes, the Aurora kit was the one to go for. But of course, even in those days, I didn't have it in the stash. So I phoned the then IPMS branch secretary, Paul Lehman, and said, did he know anyone who did? And he said, yes, Tony Willett. Phoned Tony up. Tony, being the gentleman that he was, said, yes, I've got one in the bottom of the garden. I'll let you have it on one occasion that you come to a branch meeting. Gave me the details. They were meeting in those days at the Arts Centre in Wokingham.
Mm-hmm.
I just moved to Yateley. Now, Yateley to Wokingham is about a 10-minute drive. But on a wet November evening, it's a hell of a long way. And I finally got to this place, and they were meeting in an upstairs room. As I climbed the stairs, I remember Mike McAvoy, who was then the branch secretary, saying he's having to give up because he was going to be on nights at air traffic control up at Heathrow. And you know what it's like when you call for volunteers? Everybody takes one pace backward. I came up the stairs, looked at this and said, I didn't come all this bloody way just to find a dying organisation, and took the job on. I'm told later that various people looked at each other and thought, who the hell is this fellow? Yes, I took the job on and was branch secretary for about 5 years.
Okay.
Which was great fun. I decided that we had to do a newsletter, and I said, well, who do we send it to? Right, we'll send it to members within a 30-mile radius of our meeting place. Mm-hmm. So I actually was mailing out 100 plus newsletters a month just to tell them what was happening in the branch.
Mm-hmm.
And kept that going until I gave up the secretaryship, which was about the time that the Farnborough branch got started.
Okay.
And yeah, that was it, basically. I decided I was happier at Farnborough, and various strange things happened to the Berkshire branch. So that has pretty well folded, and you had the early risers over at Early have taken over and are doing very well.
Yes. Okay, so since the early days of Farnborough, how many members do you normally get up to turn up to a branch meeting?
It varies on the weather, but between 25 and 40.
Okay.
Would be a fair figure.
And where does the branch actually meet?
We meet at the Railway Enthusiasts Club in Farnborough. In fact, that's where we started meeting, and with only one break when they were refurbishing of about 18 months, where we moved to yet another pub. We've been there ever since, and they've looked after us very well.
Okay. They obviously haven't run dry, hence why you haven't looked for another venue.
Thank God, no. They've always had a bar there. Part of their refurbishment was to make the bar a lot bigger.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay, so Mark's already alluded to this, but you have an annual show there?
We do indeed. Every September.
Okay.
Usually either the first or the second Saturday in September. Again, the venue has moved from time to time, largely because it gets bigger. I hate to think what the size is now, but yeah, let's put it this way. The actual costs of running it, of setting it up, have now moved to 4 figures.
Yes.
So it's quite a big show.
Yes, indeed. And in floor area, what are we talking about, roughly?
Difficult to say, because although obviously it's based on what I will call the Blackwater Valley, Camberley, Aldershot, Farnham, Farnborough, we get various branches from pretty well the whole of the south of England. Yes, we've had a couple of overseas people come on a fairly regular basis year after year, which is nice. I know at least a couple of people who come up from Cornwall every year.
Okay.
1 or 2 actually come south of Watford as well.
Steady. Is there anything south of Watford?
Everything happens south of Watford except for the Bolton show. Well, and Telford, of course.
Indeed. Okay, so how do people get in touch if they're interested in actually coming to the branch?
Well, this is where Mark comes in, because some months ago, he had a very nice visiting card printed, which had details of the branch and our contact details on there.
Mm-hmm.
This has gone around to various places, schools, public libraries, you name it. Members have tried to drop it off at various places.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, yes, it's paid off. We certainly seem to have a number of new members.
Okay.
It's not just the old fogies the whole time. I would say in the last year, we've picked up a number of new members, and very active new members too.
That's good to hear. Have you seen much of an uptake in the newer style of model manufacturing these days, or the model kit availability with the likes of the Gundam and the sci-fi, other than the person sat opposite you at the moment who's being sort of the rebel?
We've got a couple of dedicated sci-fi modelers.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Prentice comes to mind immediately, because he picks up gold or silver at Telford pretty well every year in the sci-fi category, in one or other of the sci-fi categories.
Okay.
So he's working to a very high standard. And we have a number of other people who dip in and dip out.
Gotcha.
Including myself. I'm one of those modelers who, how shall I put it, tries to make a model of anything that interests them.
Gotcha. Oh, just thinking about Farnborough in the location, I should imagine that quite a large quantity of the members are either former RAE or Kinetic.
More RAF-Odium.
RAF-Odium. That's interesting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've got Otto Ulrich, who was 33 Squadron, then 7 Squadron on the Chinooks. In fact, he ended up as the UK representative for Boeing on Chinooks, the sort of poacher turned gamekeeper.
Got you.
He's just retired.
Okay.
And various other people who were ex-RAF-Odium.
Okay, I would have thought with the RAE, the Royal Aircraft Establishment, being obviously out Farnborough for many, many decades, and
yes, sadly no more.
The technical side of the engineers from that, it would have been a logical progression.
We have a few, but not many. They had their own aviation society.
Okay.
And many years ago, the then secretary, Ray Sharp, asked me when I was secretary of the Berkshire branch if we could put on a display of the captured aircraft display in October, November 1945. We did this not completely, but they had organized a special showing of the film Battle of Britain in about 1972. We're going back a long way, and we put this together. It turns out that we've done it again since, properly.
Mm-hmm.
I was asked by the chairman of FAST, which is the Farnborough Aeroscience Trust, which have their headquarters in the old Trenchard building. They had produced a replica of Cody's first aircraft.
Okay, yes.
Going way, way back. And they also they were going to put it into an inflated hangar at the back of the building.
Gotcha, yes.
And they said, we want to do something special. We've got somebody coming to open this, and we'd like it to be linked to him. Winkle Brown was the guy concerned.
Ah, Eric.
Eric Brown, yes. I met him first at an IPMS meeting at Peterborough. The less said about Peterborough, the better. But we did have a very good long chat with him, a group of us, after the dinner on Saturday.
He's a fascinating chap.
He is indeed.
Or was, rather.
Anyway, I was in a very happy situation that about a year before the opening of the thing, I was approached and I said, yes, fine. A patient of mine had actually given me a copy of the original program for that exhibition. So I was able to work out every single aircraft that was in the exhibition, not just on the hard standing outside the sheds, but also within the sheds as well. Following that up, I then did enough research to be able to tell people what the colour schemes were for all the aircraft, either because of photographic references or other pieces. It actually worked out that I could tell you every single Axis aircraft that was on the airfield at the time, even if they weren't taking part in the exhibition. It was quite an interesting mix.
Fascinating. Is that list still available?
The list of what was in the exhibition is available because we did a special copy of our club magazine, Sidewinder, which I actually covered everything, including some of the equipment.
Okay.
Which was in the hangars. And
well, if there's any chance that Mark could borrow it to actually make a copy of that list, I would be fascinated, because I was actually having a conversation yesterday with someone reference Air Ministry aircraft and registrations. And we were looking at photographs of the Heinkel 162 Salamander, the Arado 96B that they had there.
Yes.
The ME410 and all sorts.
Well, I wouldn't claim to be totally accurate. Phil Butler, his book on war prizes is probably the best starting point on that. And once you start on that, you start disappearing down all sorts of rabbit warrens and coming up with information. Not least of all, again, an ex-patient of mine who told me a lovely story about the Focke-Wulf 190.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember which Mach it was, I think, an A8, but certainly a short-nosed Focke-Wulf 190, which had the sign hung on it, "Come on, boys, help yourself," meaning go and sit in the cockpit. The aircraft was stripped. One small boy was actually stopped at the gates of the RAE, walking away with the pilot's seat. After that, they took the sign down.
Yes, I can imagine why. Yes. No, a lot of the aircraft that were impressed into service were actually stayed in for quite some considerable time as well. And we, as you say, we've gone down a completely different rabbit warren than I was expecting with this conversation. But there was a Ju-352 that was used.
There was indeed. At one point, it had British markings on one side of the airframe and Luftwaffe markings on the other side of the airframe.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. Actually, we have a photographic record of that one.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
It finally got repainted properly, but, it's like a lot of these things. People think, oh, I've got a photograph. This must be right.
Yes.
It's right for that moment in time.
Exactly.
And that's the bit.
Yes. Well, going back to the 352, it was still in service or taken out of service, I believe, around about the 1950s. It had been used as a hack for quite some considerable time.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the total history of a lot of the airframes. I can say is I wish, as a small boy, I had taken a photograph of the fire dump down at the far end of Laffin's Plain, because that's where an awful lot of them ended up.
Yes.
And I remember seeing them down there.
Mm.
But at that point, I wasn't quite so interested in aircraft as I've become.
Hindsight is a wonderful tool, but also cameras are not, or were not, as readily available, especially immediately post-war, as they are today.
Well, Brownie box camera, the Brownie 127, I think, which I lost in a river in the end.
That's obviously completely another story. Yes.
It is indeed, yes. At the scout camp on the Balmoral estate, but never mind.
Oh, dear. Oh, well, I must admit, this conversation went in a completely different direction from what I was actually anticipating, but...
Often the way with conversations.
Oh, isn't it just? And Mark sat there thinking, who on earth are they talking about? Bless. Anyway, Julian...
Big grin on his face.
Fantastic. Well, Julian, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I don't know if John Mark's shown you how to actually listen to the show yet.
That is to come.
Fair enough.
I'm going to be educated in the wonders of electronics. My computer emits steam every so often. It's that old.
Understood. Anyway, Julian, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for your time. And hopefully I'll get the chance to actually meet you in person sometime next year.
Well, I would love to make it to Telford next year. I have a feeling I won't, but, so far so good, as they say.
Indeed. Well, there's always the possibility of me coming down to Farnborough.
Oh, even better. Yes. We'd buy your pint.
That'll be fantastic. Well, Mark owes me about 12 pints already at the moment for favours, so, I have to cash in some of those.
All right, Mark. Don't believe a word you say.
Anyway, Julian, thank you very much, and hopefully get to see you soon.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Visit ScaleModelPodcast.com, your hub for the best scale modelling pods, because finding great content shouldn't take longer than hunting for lost photo etch.
Right, back in 1975, BBC One aired Model World, hosted by the late Bob Sims, a programme that treated scale modelling as a skilled craft, with on-screen masterclasses and real respect for the hobby. Nearly 50 years on, that same passion has found its way back onto our TVs. Model World showed the nation that modelling mattered. The marvellous miniature workshop shows us it still does. And in true modelling fashion, it's taken nearly half a century to get there. But then again, nobody's ever rushed a good build. Hosted by BBC Radio 2's Sarah Cox, the Marvellous Miniature Workshop follows 4 talented modellers, or miniaturists as the show calls them. Lee Robinson, Abby Trotman, Hannah Lemon, and our guest, Ethan Goodbody. Ethan moved from his 8-to-5 day job as a product design engineer in the furniture industry to form Mon Studios, where he creates custom builds for customers, and has now transferred these skills, including a passion for 3D printing, to the TV. Ethan, welcome to Beyond the Box Art.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
Okay, let's crack on with the first question then. So what first drew you to the world of miniatures and model making, and how did that journey lead you to Mon Studios and the Marvellous Miniature Workshop?
It all started when I was a kid. I loved sort of Lego, building things from scratch and having like this ability to have an idea and just build it in the real world. So just going from like concepts to actual sort of final product. And so that was kind of like in my childhood, and then into my sort of early, I sort of transferred that from Lego to actual sort of more hands-on things. So I took over my dad's garage, a bit of help from him every now and again, building actual real life products and things like that. So there was one time where we had a family fancy dress event coming up, and we were going as the Flintstones characters. So it was my idea to recreate the full scale Flintstones vehicle. So the garage became an actual sort of set for building this actual full size car. So I've always loved having this hands-on approach and taking like an idea from concept into actual sort of end final result, really.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went to university. So I went to Loughborough University and did engineering there. And a few of the modules there were prototyping and CAD design and like concept design as well. And part of that was model making. So that's kind of where like the introduction came from. And I just love the idea that instead of sort of taking over my dad's garage and needing another pair of hands to make stuff, I could just do it myself. I could sort of sit at my desk and whittle away at like various materials and whatnot and have this final result that I could do on my own. I love that idea and that approach to things. So that started at uni. I began doing bits and pieces there. And then I finished uni and started a full-time job at an engineering company, as you mentioned, and did a couple of years there, but kind of got to the end of it and just wasn't feeling like my full potential. It was kind of like the same thing day in, day out, and wasn't really challenging me. So at the same time, I was still doing model making in the background and loving it. So I was like, okay, let's swap this full-time job for the part-time job at the same company and see what we can do with model making. So I picked up the social media profile a bit and started getting a few views on there. And from there, it's kind of been a bit of a whirlwind. It's just gradually snowballed into what it is now. So that's kind of like how I got into the world of it. I'll say it's kind of always been, I've always loved making things and doing that sort of thing. So model making was just a perfect combination of all of that, really.
You say about modelling, were you actually building kits or were you carving up cardboard and making stuff? I know I always got in trouble with my parents at Christmas because I took more interest in the cardboard box and the packaging it came in to make things than actually what was in the contents of the box, apart from kits.
Yeah, no, it was kind of just grabbing any bit of material I could. I was using 2mm ply and trying to cut it with like a Stanley knife. It's just the most sort of rogue material choices ever. But I mean, it just shows that you can kind of start like with anything. So yeah, it was, instead of like kits and stuff, it was more just grabbing any old material and just having my way with it. So that's how it started.
Thank you. Ethan, could you walk us through a perfect moment on the show where you had to solve a tricky build? Could you talk us through what that challenge was and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, a big episode for me, well, I had 2 episodes. One of the ones that I really liked is the farmhouse one. I think the final reveal, the result of that was amazing. In case you haven't seen it, the farmhouse episode surrounds Katie and Lee. They met actually at this farmhouse. Lee was renting the upstairs, Katie was downstairs, and Lee would let his dog out, sort of go around the garden, and the dog would always go to Katie. So that's kind of how they met. And then eventually they moved in together. They kind of joined the upstairs and the downstairs and started living together. And they had this whole life to the house. And Katie's dad, unfortunately, passed away. And they scattered his dad's ashes by the yew tree out the front. I didn't know that until we started filming on set. So I met them and we were chatting, which is all on screen. It's on TV. And they revealed that her dad's ashes were scattered by this tree. So originally I was going to do like a dowel trunk, a crackle paste around the outside and go from there. But I wanted to add a little bit more to it and just have a little bit more of like a sort of insight into that story for them and how key that tree is in their story. So kind of went away from it, had a little thought of what I could do to develop it a bit more, improve it, just make it a bit more personal. And the result of that was to sort of swap the dowel trunk for an acrylic tube and put like a little filament wire within that tube. So the crackle paste around the outside would crack and leave these small sort of gaps for the light to shine out from. So you can get, it transformed it from just a tree to more of like a tree of life, which is more of kind of like a reference to how key that tree was in their lives. So the reveal of that was like the perfect moment for me. I think seeing their reaction to that and just that extra touch of personal detail, it was really nice to kind of appreciate it and see how much it meant to them.
I have watched the series. I've done my research and I've got the receipts. All of the episodes have something interesting for people to take in. But for me, the farmhouse was the better of your two builds. They were both good in their own ways, but the farmhouse was really fantastic. And I thought the keys to that house was a very good touch, I must say. One of the questions I did have was the fan window. For modelers like Brownie and I, you basically use like a decal to do it. I was wondering how you did that. What was the process of creating that?
Yeah, so I analysed all the photos I was provided from them of the original farmhouse, and I was trying to think of ways to do it. I was going to do a laser cut piece originally. Because it was such a small scale, I just felt like it was kind of, would have looked a little bit out of place. So I used a bit of Photoshop to try and get the same pattern as was on their original. So like sort of overlaid it and then did all the various vectors and whatnot on there. And exported it, printed it, sprayed it and sealed it. Because that's always the problem. So I used a standard printer. Obviously, if you don't seal it, the ink's going to rub off when you put it in the water. So sealed that all up and then hand cut a piece of just clear plastic. I think it was just acrylic, thin, really thin acrylic. And then hand laid that on there. It was a water adhesive decal. So just literally took that, applied it, did it a few times just to make sure I had the most perfect one. And then, just put that in a laser cut frame that I'd done and added it to the model. I think it turned out really nicely. I think it was quite a nice entryway into the actual house. I really wanted to sort of nail it, and I think it came off pretty well.
No, obviously it did. Before I hand over to Brownie, you mentioned scale. I know a few of the builds it's referenced that they were sort of 1 to 24th, and I know Lee's mine is in 00 gauge, so 1 to 76. What scale were the farmhouse and the central club?
Yeah, I think the farmhouse one was 148, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
And the central club was a bit smaller. I think that was like 160, I think.
Quite a big building.
Yeah, exactly. That was an enormous one. That was the biggest one on set, I think. It was about a metre long. So I had to dial that one down.
Okay, your work at Mon Studio spans all kinds of themes. Do you have a favourite project in miniature you've ever made, and why?
One of the first ones that I did on social media, I loved. I spent a lot of time on it, like a good month and a half, 2 months, which when you're doing it part-time, it's like every day, day in, day out, doing the same thing. That was the arcade that I did. So I made this miniature arcade, programmed 3 arcade screens into it, had both working, and then at the back of it had like a backup shop kind of little room. I spent a lot of time on that. I made that a really key project because I wanted to, that was my one to get off the mark really. So I spent a lot of time doing that, and that's one that I've still got in the workshop, and I really like how it turned out. When you turn it on, you've got neon lights around the top and you've got these working screens. So that was one that I look back on and I'm like, oh, that was a good one. But I think like some of the recent ones that I've done is more to do with like brand deals and that sort of thing. So I did a brand deal with Universal Studios earlier in the year, and that was for their film How to Train Your Dragon, which came out. So they got in touch, built this miniature model for them, which wasn't really miniature. It's enormous in the end. It was about 1 meter by 1 meter. And that was kind of more, I look back at that one and I'm more just like overwhelmed that I was able to work with such a major film studio. So that's kind of like, you've got a bit of personal there with the arcades and a bit more sort of commercial and like how I see success, like working with those big studio names.
Okay, so for people to actually see what you've worked on, they can go to monstudios.co.uk?
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Ethan, what's one tool or technique that you think every aspiring miniature artist, or perhaps conversely, every budding modeler, should learn first or use first?
Yeah, I think it's more of the idea of just being open to different materials, different concepts. It's more just having this mindset of there isn't a rule book in model making. Literally any material, any tool can be used and should be used because there is like infinite ways of producing things and making things. So it's just kind of like having that concept of being persistent, being patient, trying things out. If it doesn't work, try again. Just being open to different approaches because you'll find a way that works for you. And when you do it, that's the best feeling. When you find a solution to something that creates such a realistic result or what a result you're looking for, that's the best outcome.
A lot of us as modelers, Ethan, spend a lot of time on YouTube, either in the background or just to be like, oh, I need to know how to build this. Is there any videos that you go to and think, haha, that's fantastic, that's inspired me?
I see a few things on like Instagram and whatnot. So I'm sort of like Instagram based, just because I like quick tips and tricks if they're around. But I think more recently I've tried to steer clear a bit, just to try things myself and just see what works. Because sometimes the way that someone does something, they do it in their own way and it might not work for them, but then you try it yourself and it's like the perfect result. So tutorial videos and that sort of thing are great, especially when you're getting into sort of the hobby and the passion. I think if you're looking to just explore a bit more and come up with your own inspiration here and there, if you're doing a bit too much research, you can sometimes get like tangled up in existing ideas and existing sort of principles. So it's quite good sometimes to take a step away and just try things, like have a few hours in the evening to try a few different approaches and whatnot. And just for like inspiration, you can, instead of, because I think you subconsciously, when you watch things, especially on YouTube, you will take things away and it will influence like your artwork and your models. So it's the more distant you can become from that. Sometimes you come up with ideas that you would never have come up with before, just because you're taking that step back.
Okay, that's really interesting.
If you could miniaturize anything from real life or pop culture, what would be your dream project and how would you approach it?
I think I'd love to return to the world of like arcades again and do something along those lines. Because as I say, it was a couple of years ago now, but it's still one of my favorite projects. Just because it had those neon colors and the working screens and that sort of thing, you just kind of felt, I don't even know, a step back into the past. So I think something like that would be really cool. And I think it would just sort of open up more skills for me. As soon as you like sort of do these sort of builds, you uncover new skills that you hadn't have thought of before. But I think a lot of the time with miniatures, I'm more interested in the actual story behind things. Like if someone comes to me with a really exciting story or something that captivates me, I think that's more something. It could be literally as easy as like the outside of a bank or something. Just, you know what I mean? It doesn't need to be an overly complex location. I think if you've got this story running in the background, it's a really nice like thing to make. And I think that's why the show is so good as well. The series is so great because it takes those stories and makes it a key part. Because I wouldn't say the Central Club building that I did for the first episode, I wouldn't say the outside of that is particularly like beautiful, other than the mural. It's the story behind it. It's that center point of the community that makes it so key. And it's Julia, the one who came to me and I built the model for, is her story and her connection to her dad. So yeah, I think the story behind things is so key and is what captivates us.
Yeah, I get it. The story, and in the way the program actually gets the backstory of why the person wanted the model built, is actually key to the whole success, I think, of the series.
Yeah, exactly. It's just taking something that's really key in their life and giving it back to them because it's been taken away for some reason or other. Mm-hmm. And the fact that we have the ability to do that is almost like a little superpower, isn't it?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. Okay, Nevs.
The people that have been inspired by the program and that might be picking up a project for the first time, what advice would you give them to keep the hobby fun rather than intimidating?
I think it's kind of going back on not getting too caught up in all these different techniques and approaches that sometimes sort of you just plastered with on social media and on YouTube. Just doing your own thing, like having a go with it. If it doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. You can sort of start things again and redo it. It's a hobby. It's a passion. It's not like I see model making. It's a job, but it's not a job. I'm not working. I'm literally just having fun with it. It's a pleasure to be able to do what I do, and to sort of get overly annoyed or sort of overwhelmed by it all would be, I don't know, just unnecessary because it's just doing what I love. So I think, just take your time with things and just have fun. Just to do your own thing. There's no rush. There's no pressure. If there's a timeline, push the timeline back if you need to. It is what it is. It's like, not the end of the world.
If you're listening to any of the modelling podcasts, ours, of course, but things like Just Making Conversation as well, you'll hear a lot of us have these huge projects on the go. I mean, like James Skiffins is building a 1/35th aircraft carrier that's basically like the entire midsection of the ship. We also have what we call like palette cleansers, which tiny builds. You might go to Aldi's middle aisle and pick something up small. Do you have anything like that's just something small that, you know, you've been bogged down by a big
project? You just need something small to give you a bit of inspiration.
I think I just I sometimes jump from one project to another, and that gives me a bit of variety. So I often find that mid-building one, I'm also doing a bit of CAD design. So a lot of my approach is nowadays very technical based. So I'll design things on CAD, take that away, laser cut, and then the artistic approach comes into it. So I kind of like blend the two a little bit while I'm making one. If I'm a bit fed up, it's a passion, but you can't avoid it sometimes. You need a bit of a break. If you're carving bricks all day, sometimes you need to give yourself a bit of a rest for sanity. So I'll then like sort of merge that with a bit of CAD design just to give it a bit of variety. But in terms of picking up small build, I haven't really done that yet, especially because I mean, with the show and everything, it's been quite intense recently. I just haven't had the chance to do that. But I think I definitely would. Like if I had a bit more time to do that sort of thing, it's great because you can test out different approaches and it's not tied down to a bigger overall model, is it? So that's quite a good approach.
Okay.
So are you using something like Fusion 360 for your design?
I use Autodesk Inventor. So that's what I used when I was at the furniture company. So I've kind of brought those skills through. Mm-hmm. I probably would use a different software if I was used to it, maybe SolidWorks or something like that.
Yeah.
And I know Lee from the show uses Illustrator for his models and that sort of thing. So I kind of only use it just because it's what works for me. And I like visualizing the overall model before like going out and doing it, and just to make sure everything lines up and that sort of thing. So yeah, just because it works for me, really. Autodesk.
Okay, you've mentioned laser cutting a couple of times. You've obviously mentioned 3D printing as well. Which is your preference for actual use? Is it 3D print or is it laser cut?
I think definitely laser cut. Yeah, because it's the overall basis of the model. So that's how I get all my dimensions and things to line up really nicely. I kind of like going into it with the sort of engineering mind. I like it all lining up and fitting together really nicely. So you get this snug base to work off. So I think that is fundamental to my approach, really. The 3D printing aspect is really useful, especially for like going back to the series. When I was doing the Central Club, it had about 50 of the miniature sort of chairs within it. So doing that by hand would have been a pain. It would have been mental. So I mean, you can do it, but it's going to take ages. But then it's not fundamental to process. It's just a bit of a savior, really. So I think the laser cutter is key for my approach to everything. And yeah, no, it is great, really. It just speeds things up.
Gotcha. Okay, we've already intimated on this a little bit, but on the show, it's clear that people don't just want a model. They want a specific subject in miniature, something that really means something to them. Why do you think owning a miniature, something personal, carries so much emotional weight?
Yeah, I think it's because you haven't got that, in a lot of the cases, you haven't got that place to revisit. You haven't got that place to go back to. Or if you do, it might be the other side of the country and you've got to get like a 4-hour train to go and see it. It's more just like having that sort of sentimental value close to you and like on a shelf, maybe on a mantle, just something you can see every day rather than having to sort of tear your heart away from it every time you sort of like go and visit and then return home. It's just like bringing that emotional value back home with you, really. I think that's the biggest thing.
It has more of an emotional connection as well, not being just a 2D photograph, being a 3D object.
Yeah, exactly. And on the show, a lot of the sort of contributors, they were saying, I wish I was shrunk down as well, which I was in it. And it is that. It literally is. You can see yourself in it. And with models, you can just stare at it for hours and create these little stories. Or it's almost like being transported back to a kid when you can like just you let your imagination roam wild with it. So I think that's the biggest thing.
Brilliant. Okay, Nevs.
Ethan, for anyone who hasn't watched the series, where would they go? Is it available on iPlayer? Take it?
Yes, yeah, it's BBC iPlayer at the minute, so that's the place to go visit. My episodes, if you want to go and see, are episodes 4 and 7. So it's the Farmhouse and the Century Club.
Okay, fantastic.
So the $1 million question, is there a series 2 in planning or production? And if not, why not?
I haven't heard anything at the minute, and I don't think I can disclose anything because I literally haven't heard anything. So I think we kind of got to wait for the stats to come in. So now is no better time to go and watch it. You'll be helping push a season if you do. So I think just, keep your eyes peeled. If there is, there is. And I hope there is. But if not, we're lucky enough to have had a season 1. So just keep your eyes peeled.
Fingers crossed we won't have to wait another 50 years for another modelling series.
That's right. Yeah, that's okay.
Ethan, thank you very much for your time. Your contact information is on our featured guest tab on our website, and perhaps we can persuade you to come back again in the future to talk some more about both your business and how scale modelling can be a career. Ethan, thank you very much.
That's great. No, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. And I will definitely be back. So, yeah, see you soon.
Fantastic. Awesome.
Yep. Cheers. Thank you.
Fishkop Models, elevating scale modeling to an art form. Experience highly detailed 3D printed upgrade parts that bring true authenticity to your builds. Creators of the acclaimed Rolls-Royce Merlin engine set for both the Kotare Spitfire and the Dambusters set for the Border Models Avro Lancaster. For bespoke design and printing, our service is as precise as it is personal, all at a reasonable price. Please take a look at our products on www.fishkopcompany.de. Shipping is available for all of our products worldwide.
We've been hearing from our guest, Geoff Coughlin, already this evening, but we will actually roll in with the proper introduction for him. So, those that don't know Geoff already, he's someone who's helped shape the online modelling world more than just about anyone. He's the founder and editor of ScaleModellingNow, one of the most comprehensive digital modelling resources anywhere, and a modeller whose clarity of teaching has helped thousands take their skills to the next level. It's a pleasure to welcome him officially to the show. Geoff, welcome.
Thank you very much, Brownie. Very, very pleased to be here.
Okay, so first question. What originally inspired you to create ScaleModellingNow at a time when most hobby content was very much print-based?
It's interesting, but I do remember it well. I was fortunate enough and lucky enough to be a contributor for Tamiya Model magazine for a few years. I can't remember what the article was, but I remember the latest issue of the mag dropped on the door. I looked at it and I thought, oh, here it is. It had its 4 pages of whatever. And I just remember thinking, honestly, please don't anyone get offended by this. It's just how it happened. I remember thinking, what on earth does this tell anybody about anything? How does this help modelers? Oh, it's got some nice, pretty pictures. It had maybe half a dozen pictures of build parts of the model and thinking, not enough text to explain the techniques and so on. And I get that was all around the limitations, ultimately, of what could be offered for each of the contributions to the mag. I just remember that day, so I turned around to Sarah and I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. What am I doing? I've been lucky enough to have done it, but there's got to be a better way. And so I did nothing for about a year. This was back in 2008. And Sarah, my wife, we started to think about it. She said, what about if you took the idea of modelling and took it online and created something? Of course, you start to brainstorm that, don't you? Things that we consider like just absolute mainstream now, like videos and all the rest of it. Back in 2008 and 9, it wasn't such a big thing for modelling then. And so we thought, look at this. We could have full builds. It wouldn't matter how big the build was. You could give it enough space. You could give it enough room to explain to people and show them all the build-up pictures. And what even better, drop in some short, sharp little videos that showed and demonstrated that technique actually in action. So whilst that's become more mainstream, certainly for all my builds in the last few years, back in the time, the whole thing about there weren't effective phones then that had useful cameras on them or any of that. The whole thing about video had a faulty start, and it was only in recent years with ScaleModellingNow that we have made that a central part of the magazine. Some of the older build techniques don't have videos. Everything we've done in recent years, certainly my contributions, has short, sharp videos to help modelers. There's got to be a better way. And I thought, no, the whole thing is really about trying to demystify this hobby. I've loved it since I was 7 when I started. My gran bought me a Revell Albatross in red plastic in 70s. And when you're 7 years old, that absolutely freaked me out. Quite quickly, the glue and the bits ended up somewhere, but I got an Airfix Spitfire and that kind of transformed it all. So that's how it started. And then we launched it at ScaleModellingNow, the Scale Model World at Telford in 2009. From a walkabout, really, trying to chat to people thinking, what do you think about any of this? Do you think there's anything in it? And I was really encouraged. There were lots of people who said, you should try it, you should do it, go for it. And well, here we are 16 years later and it's still going. And I'm more excited now than I was even then, I think.
Fair enough. Okay, Mark.
Looking back across your modelling career, Geoff, what would you say has changed the most in the hobby since you first started building?
That is a great question. I think without doubt, there's probably a number of things. I think the things that jump out at me are the sheer number of products that are out there that are allegedly there to help you in the process, whether that's the huge number of paint ranges, the huge number of aftermarket accessories, the huge number of tools and stuff. Back in the day, and I know we had a brief chat off air early on, and Spencer raised some great thoughts about back in the day, what did we use and how did we go about it? It was so simple. It was umbral paint, or maybe one of the little glass bottles of paint and brushes. There was never an airbrush. I mean, what's one of those? Compressor, you're having a laugh. I mean, what these things to us modelers hadn't really even been invented. So it was all very, what I would call agricultural. But that's what's changed, particularly at Scale Model World at Telford, where I loved the 2 days because I can't speak on Monday. Voice is gone because you spent in 2 days just answering people's questions and chatting, which I love. So many of the people I chat to are coming back to the hobby. They're coming back having ditched it, gone to university, got married, whatever, kids have grown up, and now they're thinking about coming back into it again. They said, honestly, that people, this is probably too strong a word for it, but they're almost sort of they've got this kind of glazed shock expression on their face, having walked around Telford thinking, holy crap, what happened to the hobby that I thought I knew? I've come back and look at it. Look at all this stuff. God, where do I start? It's things that I've just taken for granted for years, and you just do. Yeah. I think people don't know this stuff. They don't know how to do it. They want help. They want support with it.
In our day, you had to figure it out. If you looked in a magazine, you thought, I need to do, how's he done it?
That's right.
I remember, I've said this many a time, I remember as a kid thinking, I invented dry brushing. Yes. It was a happy accident. And I was like, oh my God. And away you go. You mentioned the airbrush. My first airbrush was one of them $4.99 Revel things. I had a couple of inner tubes that powered mine, made the room stink of rubber.
Mark, you've just given me a sort of cathartic experience or an element of PTSD here. What tipped the balance for me to move from air cans that used to power my first airbrush, which I can't imagine a more useless waste of time and dangerous occupation than trying to have this high-powered, uncontrollable air source getting pushed through an airbrush. Somehow you've got to do something with the end results. That's all I could afford back in the day. The thought of a compressor, at the time, they were really expensive. The nearest decent one was about £300 or £400. I had no money for that. Until I was out, and I remember I was spraying with whatever it was, and the can blew up. Actually exploded in my lean-to conservatory bit that was on the back of our house. Couldn't hear for about a minute. And I just remembered freezing, thinking, holy crap, what just happened? And there was debris everywhere. There was bits of metal and...
Where's my model?
Well, I've no idea. I can't even remember. I was just traumatized thinking, what happened? Unbelievably, I was completely uninjured, other than the fact, the hearing did return. But I just remember looking around, there was just bits of metal everywhere, bits of can and debris around me, thinking, never am I ever going to use one of these things again. And I never did. I pulled every string I could think of, family, friends and girlfriend, or wherever it was at the time. And I said, look, I need some money. I'll have to have an airbrush because I'm not stopping modelling. Clearly that wasn't going to happen. So it's true. It's exactly what happened. That's what stopped me trying to do anything without a proper air source. Air source is everything for a airbrush.
The first little compressor I got was a week's wages, and it was a little DeVilbiss thing, a little tiny...
Oh, yeah, I know, yeah.
Or the thing I remember most, it had a bright sort of orange cylinder head on it. I got it brand new from Andy Brown at the Manchester Model Shop. I think it was about 180 quid. And that would have been early 80s, maybe 83, 84, a lot of money.
Revel came out with a grey compressor with a big handle thing on the top. Yeah.
It was actually pretty good.
I bought one and I had that for absolute years. I must have had that for 15 years. And then...
I'm trying to think who made that for him. I think it might have been Sparmax or somebody like that who made it for him.
I'm not sure. But that was a great bit of kit. And just go to show what we were talking about earlier. Sometimes it's worth pushing the boat out a bit But as long as you get some half decent advice, and there is a lot of good advice out there these days, you shouldn't really be buying bad kit because you're not alone. There's loads of people out there.
When you watch these guys on the videos, they're talking away and they're spraying. What do you think this day and age? They must be making enough money at least to get a silent compressor. They are pretty quiet now. If you look around, you can get a decent one.
Mm. See, this is where we've got to thank, things like, is it the nail art industry? It's become mainstream suddenly now. We've got access to all this kit at reasonable prices. Airbrushes is the same. It's fantastic, what we can get now for not great money.
Scale Modelling Now has built up a huge library of in-depth builds, reviews, and techniques. How do you decide which kits deserve that deep dive treatment?
Good question. I mean, I'll be honest, in part, it's down to the contributor. I'm probably the main contributor, but close on the heels of me, we've got guys like Dave Coward and 2 or 3 other guys, Di Williams as well, and 1 or 2 others who, just by definition, they're going to do what I call a proper job of the kit. They'll take loads of pictures, they take a decent picture of the final thing. So that means invariably that any of the builds of a number of people will be really in depth, which is great. Some of the guys who contribute, for whatever reason, they're not so good necessarily on the writing, but they take loads of pictures, which is great. And so some of their builds won't have so many words, but have lots of pictures. I think that's one of the things that makes the magazine interesting, because you've got lots of different people with different styles, different approaches. So it's not all boring. It's not all in the same language, the same tone, the same voice, if you like. God forbid people should think I know a lot. I suppose I do know quite a bit. I've been around long enough, but there's so many people out there who know loads of stuff. So in terms of the builds, you've got some that are, 50, 60 pages, probably the equivalent thereof. You've got some that are probably 100, 150 pages. You've got some that are 10, 15. I think ages ago that we reckon the average was about 26 pages of A4 for a typical build, just to give us a rough ballpark, but you've got everything around that. The other nice thing is that as time's gone on, we've got really encouraged subscribers to send in their own models. So the subscribers gallery is exciting, because sometimes people just like to take pictures of things they've done that they like, and they give me a paragraph and we whack that in as well into the gallery. And that's nice for people to see their work. I think that's really important. It's not just me. I would have done it. If I couldn't get support for it, it would never happened. But there's about 10 regular contributors and 15 irregular contributors, which is 5.
So when you open up a new kit for Scale Modelling Now, what's the first thing you look for? That instant teller, what the build's going to be like?
So speaking personally, for ones that I might be looking at, it's interesting because I'm doing a book on the FX Jaguar just at the minute. And it made me think of that very question. I thought, well, okay, so what's the process then? So you open the kit. So immediately what I have to do is to decide, okay, so what do I want this to look like? What's the basic quality like? What are the sprues like? Am I going to have to do loads of cleaning up? What's the surface detail like? Quickly, you get over that, because you can tell pretty much when you look at the quality of the parts, at least in theory, who the manufacturer is. You've got a strong idea as to how that's going to go. So if it's to me, it's 99% going to be fine. Zucchimura, it's going to be fine. But Edward, to be fair, their kits are very good. Don't get me started on the decals, but the kits are good. And so then it's about, okay, what do I want this to look like? Where can I get some good reference for it? So I trawl the net, get loads of pictures, download the pictures that are close to the one I want to build. Can I get the decals for it? Are they in the box? Happy days. If they're not, then get hold of those. I'm not a great one for throwing loads of aftermarket everything. I think that's a real mistake. I'm at one of the famous sites on Facebook that does lots of auction of kits and stuff. It's really interesting to see how many lots come up there that you've got the kit and everything on the planet that was ever produced for that kit that's being sold. And I think sometimes that's the danger, is that we feel that we might have to get everything for it. I just don't believe that. I think you have to look at the kit, what's in it. So I absolutely do that. I go and look at, right, is this a decent seat? If it is, great. Even better if it hasn't got a seat harness, because it's being an aircraft, I can get some Edward pre-painted harnesses. There's nothing that can beat that, really. I can't see, or that's fine. So why waste money on stuff you don't need? I've got that absolute picture in my head about what I want the finished model to look like. Everything that happens after that moment is about trying to bring that about in the layer after layer after layer approach, build which sub-assemblies, which bits can I leave off, and so on. I've had loads of conversations with people at Telford this year. Guys who said, I said, what are you building? What have you finished? Well, I haven't finished anything. I've got about 20 that I'm building. And I said, why haven't you finished it? What's the problem? Can't decide how I want to finish. There's the problem, isn't it? Some people start a project and you don't know what the finished goal is going to be. That's a bit like saying, right, I'm going out in the car. Where am I off to? I haven't got a clue where I'm going and wondering why you haven't got there. I just don't get it. Sometimes it's almost out of the box. Other times I think, well, actually, no, a couple of little enhancements would be quite nice. And then sometimes you think, well, I'm just going to throw everything at this because you just think, I fancy that. But you can get paralyzed, I think, into just not doing stuff because we get overawed by the whole task ahead of us. And I think that's such a shame because we've got to have fun, got to come back to the fun bit of it.
Right, moving on then. Spencer.
Hi, Geoff.
Hi, Spence.
Good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Good to actually hear a conversation around you because normally I say, hello, Geoff, on the Friday, goodbye, Geoff, on the Sunday, and that's pretty much the sum total of it. Anybody listening to this knows that you speak clearly, concisely, and that you've always taught very well. What's one technique that you think within the hobby is regularly overcomplicated?
Oh, weathering, without a doubt. I think that is massive. I've never seen so many products and other things which have got their place, and as I probably haven't said so much yet, but I want to make it really clear. The only person that needs to be happy with that model is you. It doesn't matter what anybody else on the planet thinks about it. And I think that's true for me and what I do as much as it is for anybody else, wherever you are. I've massively got into pastel weathering in recent years because I think the more I've worked on it and played with it, it's incredibly versatile and much underrated as a technique. You can create a really great result with, not having to use, tons of washes, tons of chipping, tons of other weathering products and so on. And that might be fine. And it depends what you're doing. But if you like to do, then do it. I am never going to say to somebody, don't do stuff. I think that's the one that's probably overcomplicated because, again, I come back to that original plan that I was talking about a minute ago. For instance, I'm just about to set off on the journey to build this for this book. I'm looking at all these pictures of Jaguars, Germany-based ones and so on. I'm thinking, okay, actually not that weathered, really. Not from the late 1970s, early 1980s, from what I can see. We're not talking Gulf War. We're not talking Operation Granby. We're talking about in that 4 or 5 years that Jags were based in Germany. What did they look like? And quite interesting, that immediately then shouts to me, right, well, forget all the oil washes and stuff. That's not going to be necessary here. And immediately I'm giving myself a break there thinking, great, well, that's going to take some stuff away. But what I do notice is things like the waxy finish. I noticed that, there is a little bit of streaking here and there, but mostly they're the wraparound schemes is one of those I'm going to look at. This is good. It's not going to need a huge amount. And therefore, that's what I want to produce. So I think the danger is that people feel they have to do things. And that's the thing I struggle with in this hobby. People say, never like that. Oh, please, give me a break. At the times I've heard that, people say that, they were more this or they were that. They were nothing. Which aircraft, which date, which time, which place, which theatre, then you'll get a sense of what was typical at the time, what was going on at the time, what did they look like around then. And then, ideally, can you find a picture of the thing you're trying to create, which is nice? I can't find one of the exact aircraft I'm looking for, but I found one of 2 other squadrons that were there at the same time. Great. I now know what I want to do. So that's a bit of a long-winded answer, but without a doubt, I think it's whether the other techniques like building and stuff, all the classic elements are still necessary now. Trying to look for a flawless finish, sorting out the join lines, sorting out sink marks, sorting out ghost seam lines. When you stack it all together, you think that's great. We paint it up quickly, and then we suddenly find, especially with the metallic finish, and the next day you think, well, hang on a minute, where's that come from? That bloody wasn't there. And there's a sort of a ghost seam line. It's not actually the join, but it's just where all the plastic has congealed and dried. Then you've got to refix it and stuff like that.
The argument I always have with myself, and I guess you've alluded to this, is what am I trying to build? Am I trying to build a model or am I trying to build a replica? The two things are fundamentally different from each other. I can build a model that looks attractive as a miniature, an artifact. But unless I look at that and think to myself, well, that doesn't look like the real aircraft. Listening to your answer, I thought, we have exactly the same approach. I know from minute one exactly how that model is going to look. I pick color scheme, markings, loadouts, the weathering, everything. So I can picture it finished. I know, and I never deviate from that. You seem to have the same approach. You've picked your subject and you're going to build that subject the way that it looks.
Yeah, because I think the reality there, absolutely, because I think the simple fact is, it's only you who have to be happy with the end result. And I'll keep coming back to that, because at the end of the day, somebody else might look at some of my models and think, that's too clean. Or they'll look at that and think, nah, you've overdone that. I don't care. Sorry, mate. It doesn't bother me what anybody thinks. At the end of the day, I'm either happy or I'm not. Quite often I'm not necessarily happy with it. But by and large, I am, because it does end up the way I wanted it to. I try really hard to work on my skills to make sure that if I didn't do that bit particularly well this time, then next time it will be better than it was this time. So all the time I'm trying to get better. This is why I think this whole learning curve is just endless. You never get there. You never become that. I don't know. It doesn't interest me to be considered a great modeler or anything like that. I'm not interested in anything like that. I don't think I am. But I think I can do a decent job. I think I can produce something that I'm happy with. If other people can share in that and they also like it, and I'll be honest, this is why I love the shows, because you stick your models out there. People say nice things about them. I remember the Western Wessex man who came around at Telford and said, oh, I used to work on these. And I said, honestly, mate, can I just stop you there? Please don't say any more. Honestly. You'll have your view about what you think should be on this model, but I think FX have done a decent job with this. It's a 72nd scale Wessex. It looks like a Wessex. I'm happy with it. And he just went straight into but that. I said, no. Honestly, mate, please, I don't want to hear it. It's not a discussion I'm going to have with you. And I'm certainly not going to fall out with you. Really like talking to you, but don't tell me about all the things it isn't. It's my model and I like it. So I'm sorry that you don't, But you'll always get some of that, but I don't care. It's somebody else's issue. It's certainly not mine, because I'm happy.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned earlier about the ghost seams, which brings up another interesting kind of question, I guess. What techniques do modelers underestimate that they feel are simple, but maybe don't always get right during a build?
I honestly think it's what I would now consider the basics. It's things like join lines. It's things like classics of, like, you paint the canopy, for instance, just to stick with aircraft. And I do apologize for all those people who don't build aircraft or it's not their thing. But, I'll talk about something I sort of know about because I do it. Not doing everything to the canopy that you do to the rest of the airframe. Time and time again, you look at a finished model, and I only do it like in a competition where I think it's fair game, or someone says, look, would you judge this or whatever? And I think, you haven't done the same to the canopy. People have sprayed the interior color first from the outside, which is fine, and then the top color, but they haven't primed the model. They haven't primed the canopy as well. You get a transparent canopy almost, and it doesn't fit with the rest of the airframe. Little things like that are easily doable if planned. I just set everything up so that when I come to put in the primer on, I can prime the canopy at exactly the same time I can prime the rest of the airframe, so that it's not a big deal. I mean, I hate masking canopies.
Who doesn't?
If I could just get over that. And this is why it's great every now and again you come across some nice masks, but then it galls me to spend money on a masking set.
I just think
I must be a miserable git or a cheapskate or something.
We go back to the tools, buying expensive tools. I think buying masking sets is an absolute godsend.
It is. But a great example of that is that you don't have to buy it for simple things. What kills me is people spend money on a canopy and you mask a bloody phantom cockpit or some canopy or something, or anything else that there isn't that much glazing, and thin strips of Tamiya tape with a new scalpel blade will absolutely get it sorted and it'll be perfect. Why would I waste £2 on a masking set when I could just do that? However...
Yeah, but you would on a Lysander.
I was just going to say, they've obviously twigged that one because they produced the masking set for that Lysander. I thought, clever move. I remember back in the day with the Tamiya did a Betty, Japanese twin engine thing. And it's just covered in glass, like greenhouse, or an HE111. No, what? Absolutely. Find me the masking set.
If you do your own, what do you use? Do you use Kabuki or do you use the foil?
Tamiya masking tape. There is only one masking tape in my world, and it's Tamiya tape. So, clean bit of matte, new scalpel blade, cut it into lots of nice thin strips. The great thing is the thinner the yellow tape you cut, you can bend it beautifully. It does the front windscreen of a Phantom perfectly. It just bends all the way around and chop another little bit into little bits that just fill in the bit that needs.
So do you do small bits around the frame and then infill?
Yeah, exactly. Frame first and then...
Damn it, that's where I'm going wrong. I even do corners, little squares where the cockpit comes down and chop a corner off.
That's it, yeah. I mean, that can work, but the strips are quite nice because if you go right into the corner, the new blade, I'd use a 10A, a scalpel blade, the 10A Swan Morton one. It's great. It's nice and pointy. It gets straight into the angle, so you can use straight lines all the way around, which is a treat.
I've just done the Azure Elise. That's all painted up. I was watching Jen
Wright,
and she uses the foil. I thought, oh, give it a whirl. It was pretty good, actually. It was really nice. You know, like sometimes when you're cutting around the framework, you don't always press hard enough or you get into the corners and then you pull a bit off. But with the foil, it was really easy to do.
Yeah, I mean...
I've not got it off yet. I don't know how good it's going to be, but...
You can even do that. Sometimes with tomato, I do the same thing, just with a cocktail stick. Just get a section, put it over the bit you want to.
All primed up.
And just cut around with the new scalpel blade. But of course, you've got to make sure that you're right in the angle because you can easily cock it up and put a line across the pane or something, which is irretrievable. So somebody once said to me, that's not for the faint-hearted. I said, no, it isn't. I don't often do it. I won't do it unless I absolutely have to. But I know people who do, so.
I've done that and I've cocked it up.
Yeah, and so have I done that.
Because we're idiots and we never learn.
And you're even doing it thinking, I'm going to cock this up if I do, and then I've done it.
They do say that you shouldn't think about the negative. It's a bit like saying to somebody, watch your step there, because sure enough, you say that and they fall over. Apparently our brains register the negative element and then go on to do it, which is an interesting bit of psychology. So.
I do that when I'm scribing. I think I'm going to come off this line and I tell myself that and then instantly I skip it.
Yeah, that's it. That's what's happening. Your brain registers, oh, I mustn't do this. Oh dear, I'm doing it.
Oh, you've written your signature in it and you didn't want to.
It's a nightmare. But we try and learn from things like that, hopefully, but not always.
The secret is don't buy a kit that needs rescribing, Spencer, you and your monograms.
Where's the fun in that? Where is the fun in building a kit that doesn't need lots of filling and sanding and extraordinarily bad language?
Do you want a list?
It's really interesting you say that because a few years ago, I thought, wouldn't it be fun now with a bit of experience to go back and start picking off some of the old kits I absolutely loved when I was a younger modeler. Things like the old Airfix, the Rotodyne, the Bristol Super Freighter, some of these sort of things. And then have a bit of a play with today's skills and perhaps add a bit of detail, do a bit of rescribing, bit of riveting and so on and the rest of it. And I've absolutely loved doing those. I tell you, I pick one off each year at the minute, or one or two. They take a bit longer, but they're such fun because the kit costs nothing, really, relatively to new products. The trick is to pick one of the better, older ones that was basic, but the fit was okay, as a general thumb.
Speaking of modernisation and new tools and techniques, has anyone tried using the new ceramic scalpel blades that are available?
Yes, I've got one.
It's on the Christmas list.
I've got one, but you have to be really careful with it over what you cut. Same as with when you were talking about the nippers, because I have got through a couple of blades by choosing the wrong subjects. The first thing I used it on was cutting out very small decals and stencils. I go around them without much pressure and cut things out cleanly. But when you get to sprues, you've got to be really selective over what you use them for.
Haven't found an issue. I've been using the same blade now for probably the best part of 6 months, and Dan used it at Telford when we were doing some of the demos for ammo, etc., and he couldn't believe how old the blade was. But it's virtually as new after 6 months of using it. And you've got the advantage that you can virtually put your finger on the end of it, and like a scalpel, you won't cut yourself. So you've got a bit of shop safety there as well.
It won't cut you.
Does that go on a Swan Morton handle?
No. I got mine from Amazon, and the manufacturer is something like Slice. It's not that expensive, but you've got different types of blades, so you can get the same as a 10, 10A, 11 without an issue.
All right.
If you're taking the joint off of a component on a sprue or cutting as you would with an ordinary blade, it's just as good, if not better. and it lasts so much longer, but it's also for shop safety. You just don't cut yourself on the damn thing.
That's really... I got a company called Steady Tool who are doing tools. I got one through them, and it's just bizarre. The ceramic blade. It's really impressive. Like you say, you can't cut yourself. It's super sharp and supposed to last 5 times longer than a steel blade in terms of sharp.
Easily.
Yeah.
Easily.
They are really pretty impressive.
My friend Harris came over on, what day are we today? Tuesday. Came over yesterday. We were looking at the Argophile ceramic scrapers that you can buy. They don't have replaceable blades, but they're in a plastic handle with this ceramic blade that's part of it. You said, what's so special about that kind of thing? And I said, well, they don't flex like a scalpel blade would in the handle. I said, just give it a try. And he was like, oh, okay. So he started scraping on a piece of sprue and he went, okay, I'm sold. That's unbelievable. And I've had that thing now since the Nationals last year, not this year, last year. And I've used it all year and it hasn't dulled at all. And I've used it on pretty much every build. They are unbelievable. It's a fantastic technology, isn't it? You've got these new ceramic blades that you can use. I haven't tried putting it on my finger, though. It looks sharp to me. As mentioned earlier, I am an idiot. So I probably would end up cutting myself just to see whether or not I could cut myself. And I don't really want to do that. But they are really, really fantastic. I'm going to have a look at those blades, though, and see. Where did you say you could get those from?
Amazon.
Right.
And I'm sure the name is Slice or something very close to it. Just look for ceramic scalpel.
Yeah, Slice. Slice is the brand.
Okay, brilliant.
I actually demonstrated to Dan at Telford. I put my finger on a blade and showed him. Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? That's a great idea, Brownie, for the Techniques Bank. I'll get hold of some and create a video that show people it and see how it works.
But also, if you're actually trying to entice your children to do modelling.
Exactly.
It's better to actually have something like that for them to have a go with rather than actually giving them a scalpel.
That's really good, that is. That's terrific.
But anyway, we digress.
Geoff, in all your time at Scale Modelling Now, obviously you've seen kits from every manufacturer imaginable across our hobby. Are there any trends in kit design that you're really excited about? But conversely, are there any trends that are giving you concern?
Oh, that's an interesting one. Thanks, James. I think the trend is without doubt 3D printing. It's transforming the whole of our hobby almost by the week, not only with all the accessories you can get, but also the unique kits, the one-off kits and so on. So without a doubt, watch that space. That's going to transform over the next couple of years. I think we'll look back on it and think, wow, look at that. 3D printing will become more mainstream for people. I've got friends who've got nothing to do with modelling at all who have bought them and produced all sorts of interesting things. I suspect that will be the biggie for me. And the fact that some manufacturers are including parts in their straightforward injection moulded kits is great. Talked about that 4-art HMS Coventry ship that I'm going to have a play with this year as a challenge to do something I'm not comfortable with. It's great that you've got these beautiful details. I talked about the FX Jaguar. The one thing that kit's lacking, of course, is the complicated undercarriage legs that have got all the hydraulic lines and stuff that are very obvious to me. Inside the armour, produced some beautiful undercarriage legs that have all of that moulded on. And that, for me, will transform. So I'm going to try those in the one I'm building for the book to see how they go.
The seat's worth getting as well, Geoff. The seat's amazing.
Yeah, got the seat. Yeah.
And the cans, brilliant.
Yeah, got the cans. Yeah. There's some great stuff out there.
Also, the intakes that matter as a scale, which Chris now produces in the UK for the American manufacturer, they are worth getting as well, the seamless intakes.
Yeah, I saw those. Although one of the things I do like aircraft modelling, particularly jet aircraft modelling, is if there's ever an issue with intakes, I can't imagine a set of intakes I've ever bought for a kit. I'll just add a full guard and I haven't got the cost or any of that crap. And the beauty is that Airfix even include a decent pair in the Jaguar kit. That's personal taste.
But you've got the other advantage with Chris's set. He gives you the APU, which goes inside the port undercarriage by the air brake bay, which some people, they want the Jag never parked with the air brake closed because they couldn't start the Jag.
That's a great point you've made right there, Brownie, about just going back to that plan we were talking about at the beginning. That you will see in those pictures, because every picture you see of a Jag parked, the air brakes are deployed, they drop out. And so Therefore, that becomes more relevant in my world. You need that little APU thing in there. But as you say, you get it in one of those sets, which is great, which is nice.
But the other thing to think about is the colour scheme, the wraparound was a matte finish. But the exhaust stains used to cause havoc. The squadron always wanted clean aircraft rather than dirty. So the satin finish that the aircraft had was caused by the air engineers going around with rags with WD-40 on, actually wiping down the matte camouflage. That's where you got your satin finish from, is literally it's oil on top of the matte paint.
See, that's really interesting, isn't it? Because, yeah, that's very apparent in the pictures, is that kind of, that's what I call that kind of waxy satin finish. Yeah.
It's WD-40.
Yeah, see, Phantoms, which I love, obviously, because I just do, they're much the same again. Certainly the British ones were, when you look at a lot of those, they also have this kind of waxy look to them. And that's great, because you think, oh, okay, well, I've got to do something with that. And, you know, so I'll create that at the end. And it's quite nice because you can often achieve that finish with buffers. But because I almost exclusively do like to put decals onto a gloss finish and then seal it in with another coat of gloss varnish, you need some sort of matte varnish. And I find matte over a high gloss finish, matte varnish over a high gloss finish will often give you that really nice, gentle, satiny, waxy look, which is great. Not always, but often.
One of the other things that seems, I know you talked about the 3D printed part. There's a lot of interest in 3D decals as well. So a few of these guys know I want to do a little group of Heinkel 111s, and there's a few kits out there now for the, obviously, as you know, they're very glass nose. You can see all the insides.
There's a space for those, isn't there? We've got Quinta, which have gained a real iconic standing. What I call naughty but nice accessories. It's going to cost you a lot of money, and there might be some ethical issues, but the bottom line is they are magnificent. You know, they really work well. They fit well. I've tried them on 2 or 3 projects now, and they're great. They're kind of bankers. I think they probably are. There are 1 or 2 others I've come across. I think that it's just not as refined as that. So, but they're lovely, aren't they? You know, and so I was a real dilemma over that with the Jag as to whether to buy the Quinta set for it or to just paint and finish off the molded detail, which is very good in the FX Jag kit. But I've decided to buy the Quinta set, so I'm going to scrape it all off and put that on.
Have you been saving up then?
This is what I say. For me, it's never going to be every project, but every now and again you think, well, actually, 9 times out of 10, the canopy will be open on my models because I think, look, it's a jet. You know, there's not a lot interesting on bloody cockpit on a jet, a more modern Cold War type jet. So you might as well open the canopy because you've got something you can detail up and add a bit of spice to, and it looks great. Sorry, James, to answer your question there. So you've got nice seats, you've got resin seats, but not resin anymore. It's all 3D, isn't it? All the best ones 3D. The precision on those parts is fabulous.
I'm skeptical now, partly because my 3D printer's knackered. But yeah, you're right. I picked up a seat from Brownie for a little zero. When you see these parts, it just makes you think, well, actually, I'm going to finish that build. And I think you were right, Geoff, as well. You know, for Heinkels, I want to do 4 of them, and they're going to be different manufacturers and different quality of kit. You'll think, well, actually, this next one, I'm going to put all the bells and whistles on. I'm going to put the 3D decals. But the other one, I'm going to build pretty much out of the box.
Absolutely. Yeah, because the way you're thinking there, I'm thinking, I bought 2 more Jags. And I thought, there's so many different schemes you could do for that. We could do an Overseas Air Force. We could do another one. I've already done a Desert Storm one for ScaleModelling. So this one that'll go in the book won't be in there, but it'll be separate again. So it'd be nice to have a little collection there. Like you've got with your Heinkels, you could have maybe 3 or 4 Jags in the stand or something. It look quite nice. That's the plan.
Geoff, you were talking before about people coming back to the hobby. I'm one of those. I had 45 years off and then came back during COVID. So for people like me, people like you are a godsend. You've helped thousands of modelers improve through videos, builds, and articles. What's the most rewarding piece of feedback or success story that you've ever received?
I can't honestly put my finger on one thing, Martin, but when you have a conversation with somebody, it might have gone for 20 minutes at Telford, and it's one of these guys, maybe like yourself or whoever it was, he's coming back and they're asking you these questions, and you see it's almost like a bit of a mission to encourage them to give it a go. You're not building for anybody else. You're building for yourself. That's all that matters. So you won't get instant results. It's going to come because of practice. It's impossible to look at this stuff and think, wow, I'm going to my next model is going to look like that, because it's not. It's just not. There's going to be an awful lot of cock-ups, mess-ups. But as I said, I do genuinely believe that something like Scale Modelling Now, where you've got a techniques bank you can go to and look up any technique, and there must be hundreds more that we could put in there, and I always want to include as much as we can in there. It's going to give you a starter for 10. It's going to give you the help that says, look, this is a way you could try it. That works. It's not the only way, but it's a way. So why not give it a crack? And seeing people go away, and what you can just see in their face that they're optimistic that they could do it. That's worth $1 million to me. I just love that.
Geoff, you've worked alongside many talented builders over the years. What has influenced your own modelling the most, and what did you take from them?
Well, I've always believed you absolutely can learn from everybody. And it goes back to a brief chat we had earlier about trying different areas of modelling, because there's a whole range of skill sets I'm coming across at this new motorbike model that I'm trying. I've never done one before. I'm thinking, wow, this is a bit of a dark art, but there's a huge steep learning curve there. Thinking, great, I could use some of those in some other areas of my modelling. Even doing a bit of armour. Goodness, I haven't done much armour. I've done a little bit of armour, and I've loved it when I've done it, because it's so different. I can't imagine how different that is to the aircraft modelling that I do. It's a completely different set. I think, some of the expectations with armour modellers is that they set the bar so high that it frightens the crap out of me. I would build something that's armour. I can feel almost like this kind of rivet counting maelstrom arriving to basically rip it up and throw it in the bin. And that's completely unwarranted. But there's just something about, get the joy of thinking, well, I don't care what anybody else thinks. And if I'm happy with it, great. But I will learn stuff from doing that little ferret tank or whatever, which I thought was a great little, it's an armour car, isn't it? Airfix release. What a great little kit that was. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Did that in a couple of days. That motivated me to want to go and do more. So that's picking up stuff from other people. I'm always at my ears. I've got this radar on all the time. I'm listening to what other people are doing.
I think there's a more, I don't want to say highfalutin, but more personally, I think this past year, I've got into more the philosophy of why we do what we do, and almost the philosophical approach. I saw your stuff in person in the real world at Lincoln, and then I saw it at Telford. And I did say to Brownie, I said, Geoff does very clean, very precise, and you don't overdo the weathering. Your builds speak for themselves in the way that you do it. It's interesting that Spencer is now doing this almost back to basics, very clean, very precise painting style. Spence, would you say that's more of a Tamiya way, the sort of Tamiya box style?
Yeah, I guess so. If anything, I think it's more the Hasegawa way. Back in the day, I remember having a Hasegawa catalogue back in the early 80s, and I was taken by the cleanliness of their models. And then I went to Nuremberg, and they'd actually got a stand there. In the glass cases were models that had obviously been used as part of the box art. I was really taken by them. And I feel like I've split my brain in two, because I really like models that are nicely weathered. Martin and I were both in Eindhoven at Scale Model Challenge. The vast majority of models on display there are heavily weathered, and they've pushed that to an art form. We go back to the art that Geoff mentioned earlier. But equally, I like to see a model that's completely precise, that's almost flawless in its approach. And I can get as much from a model that has been built perfectly, where all the panel lines are just defined and that's it, there's no other surface effects on there, as I can from seeing something that's got prototypical weathering patterns. I think it's because I cross-pollinate over different genres. I do cars, bikes, aircraft, armour, dioramas, the whole shooting match. And my thought processes are different for each of those models. I don't build aircraft in the same way I build armour. Armour is very much a flight of fantasy, if you like, where I'll build a piece of armour the way that I think it should look and the way that pleases me in terms of weathering. Basically, I'm creating science fiction, I believe, when I'm building a piece of armour. The model is mired in science because it's a real thing, but it's a fiction because I put weathering on it that didn't exist in the real world. I put stowage on that probably didn't appear on the real vehicle. Figures don't look the same as the real crew. Whereas an aircraft model, I'm happy to go down a route where I'm picking a But I like the aircraft very much like Geoff. I think we have very similar approaches to this. I don't like my aircraft to look overly weathered because it takes away from the colours, the markings and the shape. Something I've always found almost borderline offensive, really, is if somebody looks at one of my aircraft models I've spent hours building and the first thing they say is, I like the weathering, I almost feel like picking it up and throwing it in the bin. Because I think, well, what about the other bits? What about the construction? What about the paint finish? I was very much like that. But I guess it is certainly, I mean, to me, maybe a good example of that, because their aircraft models are built in a very different style to their armour models. The armour models are weathered, aren't they? The aircraft models aren't. They're almost picture.
But it just doesn't this just come back to, it is what you want it to be. At the end of the day, if you like it, happy days. You cannot please everybody. And I think the massive mistake that modelers make is when they try to please other people, or they are trying to set themselves a standard that they judge to be against somebody else. I'm not talking competitions here. I'm just talking about what you're setting out to achieve at the beginning. If you forget all of that clutter and just think, right, I've seen a picture of something. For me, a lot of it's emotional. All this stuff I was talking about, working on some of these older classic kits, for instance, that I'm doing a few of those each year now. That's almost exclusively emotional. I had such joy when I built it the first time. It might have been a heap of crap by today's standards, but at the time, it gave me such fun. I'm thinking, great, I've now got another Bristol freighter. I might not fly it round to my mate's house with the dinky cars in it, unload, go on holiday. I can fill up with his dinky cars and come back to my house. Okay, we might not do that anymore.
I think that's a really good point about it being emotional. The reason why I built the Century series of models, it was an emotional connection I had to these kits that I basically attempted when I was a kid, made a complete hash of, and felt that I needed to return to them. And I did feel quite emotional about that. I mean, I feel genuinely quite emotional about the hobby. I found myself rereading old Scale Models magazines from 83, 84 and everything. There are authors in there who are no longer with us. Geoff Prentice is no longer with us. Roger Chesno is no longer with us. Chris Ellis is no longer with us, although he was in Airfix magazine. I put myself in the position of thinking about these people and how they approached their hobby and what did they do differently to what I'm doing today when they were at home at their workbenches or whatever. And I do find maybe that's an age thing. Maybe we're sort of getting old and we want to rekindle youth or something. I don't know. But I do find that I'm becoming more and more emotionally attached to these older kits. The newer ones almost don't really interest me that much. I say this as a professional that does this for a living. If somebody was to say to me, what would you rather build, an old, a monogram F106 or to me as brand new F14D, I'd go the F106 because I have a connection to that. The other one is just ammunition that I need to expend to do the job that I do, whereas the F106 would be something I would pick. Those two things are obviously very different.
But again, I think for me, what I love about all of that is that actually it's quite a challenge picking on some of these older kits. And it just gives me a chance, to be honest, with some of the more modern kits, there's not much scratch building to be done. But it's quite fun to get out some strip and do some internal framing and a bit of plastic card. The cockpit hasn't got a floor or a seat. I remember one of the little things I did was a little de Havilland Heron that Airfix did. I mean, back in the day, it was a lovely looking classic aircraft. It's got no interior. So I thought, okay, what do I see in any of the pictures? There was one that was still knocking about the circuit in Jersey Airways marking. And all I could see from any angle was the red headrests or the covers on the headrests in the seats in the cabin. So I thought, brilliant, put in a bit of plastic card for the floor, get some little squares of balsa wood, cut them up and make some little noddy seats, but just paint the headrests red. Did I do that? No, I actually got some metal foil and made some little sort of headrest covers. And honestly, it took no time, but it was such fun to do. That's the first thing people comment on it when they look at the model. They say, oh, look, you've detailed the interior. No, I haven't. I'll pull the right flanker in. You won't want to see what's in there, but it doesn't matter. There is a seat where there's supposed to be a seat. I only bothered with the ones on the outside by the windows. What's the point? The ones on the inside, you can't see them.
That's an attitude I can buy into, Geoff. If you can't see it, why bother?
A general rule of thumb, if you can't see it, what's the point? Why would I waste time on it?
I think that's such an important thing to get across to people, that you shouldn't ever compare yourself to another model maker. We're all on the same path. We're just in different places on there. And I think it can be so debilitating to look at somebody's work and think, I'm never going to get to that point. That person who's at that point probably thought the same thing years back, and they've just enjoyed the journey.
It's true. And I always remember there was a Hornchurch model show, the 2-day show they used to have. It's Southern Expo, I think they used to call it, down there. I remember it must have been at least 30 years ago. I turned up there and I remember thinking, wow, there was a 56 Squadron 48 scale Phantom that the person had done, the British one, an FGR2. And it was just epic. And he drilled out with a pin vise drill every single rivet that was in it and weathered it. And it had the sharp mouth under the nose. It was grey. And I thought, wow. Honestly, I just kept spending my time looking at it. And I mean, I look back on that and I think, well, at the time I thought I'll never be able to build this. I would love to, but I could never do it. And now I thought, no, I have. And I've done more and different things that I would argue are equally on a par with it. But it's not come about because I thought I couldn't do it. It's because I did it because I wanted to do it. And I think if you want to do something, you'll put the time and the effort in to try and get there, and put up with the pain that route will bring. Yeah, absolutely. That's the one. That's the one. That's the aircraft. It's a great one. I think it was one of the options in the Revelry release at the Hassegate. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. Yeah. Epic.
Geoff, Scale Modelling Now is known for multi-part and long-term builds. What's the toughest or most demanding build you have ever worked on for the site?
Right. Oh, boy, oh boy. That's a tricky one. I think I come back to that wretched Kitty Hawk Jaguar, the GR1, that ended up being the only one that beat me and I've never finished.
How far on was you with it? How far, at what point did you give it up?
I got it to painting and decaling. It was painting and decaling.
Oh, right.
And then I decided I'd left the undercarriage and stuff as an aircraft model. It's the one utter piece of nonsense. Well, no, one of a number of pieces of nonsense in the kit. Where,
yeah, but haven't you got that over and behind you?
No. The undercarriage is a complete joke. I've no idea. I still don't know to this day how all those bits fit together because the instructions were useless. And you couldn't work out how they actually fit in. And then because nothing else had fitted internally, we're talking about the rear bulkhead being about 2 millimeters out and something else not fitting. And I just thought it's killed me. It's killed the enjoyment. And I thought it doesn't warrant more of my life. So that was without doubt the greatest challenge as a modeling thing. My great sadness is I never did finish it. But I would argue that probably on a more positive note, these classic kit builds of some of the old Airfix kits take quite a lot of work because I enjoy that little bit of scratch building that goes into them. The end result is very pleasing, which is nice. Yeah. I mean, I haven't had the balls yet. I've got in my loft a 32nd scale Lancaster to build. And like some of the conversation we had earlier about B-17, I'm thinking it is never going to get built. I have absolutely nowhere to put that model. And what are you supposed to do with something like that? I've heard people hanging them on walls. Well, great, but that's going to go down a bundle, isn't it? Here, put that on the wall at home. Well, would you believe, and I don't want to upset anybody here, but I had a great conversation with a very well-known museum, and they were chief exec and all the rest. It was all up for it. And this was the project, right? It's going to be all singing and dancing. I'd got hold of a guy at Smart FX, the guys who do all the electric motors, engines, sound. The whole startup sequence for all the engines was going to be perfect. I've got a mate called Steve who was a cabinet maker. He was going to make, he said, yeah, we'll do the cabinet. We'll do it all big glass case. There'll be a button that you press and the whole thing will just work and start up in sequence. I was so excited about it. And Julian, who'd built the static version of the big Lanc for the magazine Scale Modelling, was going to donate his so we could have two in separate cabinets, all on wheels. They could wheel them around wherever they wanted them. And then we started down that. Oh, no, it's better than that. There was a great contact with Peter Jackson, who wings behind. He comes to the UK quite a lot, and we were highly likely to be able to get hold of him and ask him to come and do a big opening ceremony. That would have brought loads of kudos to the museum. And then, so we started that. About a year, we'd got into it quite a way. I went back to the museum and said, okay, so this is to update you where we're going. She said, oh, we're not interested in that. No, we're not going to do any of that. Thanks very much. So no, thanks for interest, but we're not doing that. And considering it was not going to cost them nothing, I was gutted, absolutely gutted. I thought, what a lost opportunity, an educational piece, an interesting piece. So I'm afraid this big lank is a bit tainted for me now. If anyone wants one, you can have it. No, it's fine.
I think we alluded to this earlier on, but we'll maybe expand on this. The hobby's undergoing a generational shift with new tech, resin printers, YouTube creators, and digital workflows. What innovation do you think will define the next decade of the hobby?
I do believe it's definitely the whole 3D thing. I think it's going to transform everything. It might even be that mainstream injection molded kits moves towards 3D printing. I think that over the next decade, I think it will get to a point where basically you'll buy whatever a download for the kit you want and you print it and you'll produce the kit. I think that's where it's likely to go in 10 years, which is extraordinary when you think about it. Technology is moving along so quickly and getting better very quickly that I think that's the thing that's going to change everything. The manufacturers are going to have to rethink, I think, how they do stuff. But I'm pleased that's not in now. It's not where I would particularly want it to go, because I actually enjoy the whole excitement of a box of bits and all the other exciting tasks that happen, but we'll see.
Do you think that's going to have an impact on standards within the hobby? Because one of the upside of 3D printing is that there's a huge amount of detail on all of these parts. The downside to 3D printing is that there's a huge amount of detail on all of these parts that have got painted. There needs to be maybe an uptick in painting skill levels. Do you think that'll come along with the creation of these parts?
I'm not sure, Spence. I think the reality is that manufacturers will begin to provide options. You can have this kit any number of 4 or 5 ways. You can have a detail one, you can have a basic one, you can have a middling range one. And, I don't fully understand the technology about that, but I suspect that's where it will go. I think because they won't have to produce tons of stock, what they do is find a way of you producing it on your own printer, and you'll have the technology to be able to do that. And I think that's where it's going to go. So I don't think the skill is necessarily what might attract people. It might attract some, but not everyone. I think that's...
I mean, it's definitely exciting, isn't it? Whereas back in the day, you'd have resin updates for kits that basically didn't fit. We've all used parts that need to be up to date. Whereas now these 3D parts are designed off the CAD so that they're drop-in parts. I've used drop-in sections on Edward kits where you're just removing plastic sections and replacing them with resin sections, and they fit perfectly. I think it's a very exciting development.
Every year, the models just seem to get better and better. And the modelers, when you think, how good can they have? What's the end result? What's it going to end up like in another 10 years? What's modelling going to look like then? What kind of things are we going to be putting out?
Take a look at the new Dragon BF109 that's come out in 1/48, which is slip molded. You're looking at around 8 components to make the whole kit. So you've got no spine joint. You've got very minimal butt joints that you've actually got to worry about. They even supply decals in the kit that you don't even have to paint the kit now. The whole thing, the whole colour scheme, plus the camouflage on top, is all provided by decal. It's a case of where does it stop? Are they trying to replicate the Gundam style of modelling where it's very slipped together, you put it together in a very short space of time and you've got a representation that is actually sat on the table and with minimal effort? Or are they trying to actually improve the quality of the build before you get to the painting stage, so you have the option of the decals or just painting?
Good point. Yeah. All big innovations, aren't they?
Yes, very much.
One of the themes we've touched on tonight is motivation. What keeps you motivated to keep building, to keep writing on these subjects, to keep teaching others the skills that you've learned along the way?
Having fun, enjoying it. It's the number one reason I do it. It has always been and always will be. The day it ceases to be fun will be the day I'll do something else. It's so many different things to different people. The beauty of our hobby is that it can be absolutely what you want it to be for you. Whoever you are, whatever level you are, whatever age you are, whatever skill level you are. And that makes it massively attractive. So it means that I will always have challenges, something else I could try, something else I've not done before. And I've talked about some of those already tonight. There's never an excuse to be in a rut. Always an opportunity to try something different. Just enjoy it.
Do you actually have any other interests? I know, like Spencer does his drumming and he likes his football and sport.
Yeah. I mean, I love walking. Sarah and I go walking quite a bit. I love photography, do a lot of photography on and off. It's interesting because I've always enjoyed the writing, but it was only in recent years that the books have come along. And I've just found that what's interesting about that is the research behind some of these things and the stories behind some of these things. And that is a really interesting element to the whole thing. Like, I love reading. I do like real books, and that's good. But factual books, I love reading factual. I'm not a great one for fiction, but that's another story.
Yeah, we talked about beginners a little while ago and people getting back into the hobby. We've seen huge changes and improvements. But if someone came up to you as a beginner and they had, say, £50 to spend, what would you tell them to buy and why?
You're getting some good questions tonight, mate.
Yeah, good questions. I think the first thing to do would be to try and tease out what interest have they got, what sort of subject matter is going to float their boat. I think that's a biggie, because that will then target you towards, a sensibly priced kit we know is going to fit, work, and should be an enjoyable build. That's the first thing. Then it's what are the basic tools, the most basic tools that you could get going. We've talked about, because I've only got 50 quid. We're going to have to start compromising a little bit on some of the tools we've been talking about tonight, because, we're going to blow it all and sit there admiring their lovely 50 quid side cutters and not be able to do anything else.
Can I just say, Dan this week came up with that thing you posted on our page, the 20 quid for a kid to... Yeah.
It was a bit of a riff on the German supermarket Airfix and Revel kits that seem to do the rounds every 6 months. And it was a chap who had the challenge of putting together a basic beginner's kit for under 20 quid or something like that. It's a good idea to get someone set up to see if you can do it. You can put together a very basic kit of fairly decent stuff to get someone started, including the cost of the kit.
The other thing is not to lose sight of some good second-hand gear. Look on some of these Facebook groups. You can get some really quite useful or nearly new gear to get you going. I'd ask about, what do you see yourself? Would you like to get into spraying it, or would you like to hand paint it? And what do you want to do? And try and find some things that I know that they could begin to succeed at, because success will breed success. Success will breed interest. If you set people out to fail, it's a waste of time. It's so easy to apply tons of years of knowledge to that and then completely miss the point. It's what can I encourage you to do with basic liquid cement, some basic sanders, some buffers and things that you can help clean up some joints. Yeah, some basic skills to make the thing look decent. Once you've done it, you can get some of these 70-second scale things that are perfectly great at entry level. I bet you could do it all within 50 quid. But quite quickly, I'd be saying, look, try and see if you couldn't get a second-hand airbrush, and get into airbrushing as soon as you can. Because I'm sorry, I'm not wishing to offend anybody who enjoys their hand painting, but I did a frog javelin last year just for the hell of it, and did it as a hand painting project. And I actually loved doing it. It was great. It was fun. It was different layers, plenty of thinned paint and all the rest of it. And it came out okay. It's all right. And it made me think, no, actually, this is certainly a reasonable way forward if you can't afford to get into the airbrushing stuff to start with. But it would never supplant an airbrush in my world when you could get access to one.
Would you definitely say it's better to go the second-hand route and try and get something modern that's going cheaper than direct someone towards an older classic kit that's really cheap?
Yeah, I probably would, because unless I was sure that, things like the fit were going to be all right, a lot of people will struggle with, well, now what do I, so now I've got to think about filler, have I? So then, then that's a whole world of pain. Old Matchbox kits, you see, would be a good choice because they fitted really well, weren't overly detailed. Yeah, there were issues in other departments, deep color line, blah. But at the end of the day, it still looked like what it did and it fitted. And that's why they were so successful and popular. So why not dig? You can get hold of those on the second market for very little money, which would be a good shout, actually.
And finally, the big one. If you could choose one build from your entire portfolio that represents the peak of Geoff, which one would it be and why?
I can answer that straight away. It would be the Zukimura F4E Phantom 2, F4EJ Kai. They released it in the retirement blue, metallic and grey ski. Blue, black and grey. I just think it was a great kit. The decaling was a huge challenge. I mean, the decaling took 4 days to do the decaling, all on it. It was just a huge project, and that in itself made it a challenge. Not problematic, just a lot of it. You had to cut some of the bigger ones into small bits so they would all fit well. But I think at the end of the day, it looks exactly as I hoped it would look. It's eye-catching and it's a Phantom, and I love it.
Okay, so where can people find your site then, Geoff?
Very easy, thank you, Brownie. ScaleModellingNow.com. Just start typing in scale modelling, you get to the second L and it comes up number 1 in Google. Just go and have a good look, good explore. There's loads of freebie downloads in there, and that's the easiest way to access it. Only costs you 18 UK GB pounds a year to get access to everything we've ever done, which is 16 years of content. I'm sure many of you, and I know we've got many listeners from the States, and certainly Scale Modelling Now has loads of American friends who are modelers who come on it. I think it's about $20 or 36 Australian dollars. Basically, if you do a currency convert, put in £18, you'll see that it's very little money. We're only going to cover our costs. We're not looking to make huge money out of it. We want to keep the price low, and we'll do that if we get lots of subscribers. If you see that it's a good thing, happy days. I'd much rather have lots of people who are interested and benefit from it and aren't paying much money. And what you're not doing is you're not paying paper magazine subscription rates, which are considerably more for a good deal less.
I took about 20 minutes to make the decision of actually just having a quick look at the subjects that was available on the freebies that you're talking about, and I was sold straight away.
Thanks, Brownie. And thank you for supporting it. I appreciate it.
I'm a member as well. I have been since you started.
We know you're a member, Mark, but have you actually joined the website?
Leave that with you, Mark. Leave that with you.
I don't know what you're talking about, Ronnie.
We were talking earlier about you buy any kit and it's likely to be more than 18 quid.
Geoff, thank you so much, not only for joining us, but for the sheer amount of work you've put into supporting the modelers around the world. Scale Modelling Now has become a genuine cornerstone of the hobby, and it's been brilliant getting the chance to dive into the mind behind it. Geoff, thank you.
My pleasure. It's been great to be with you and to share that time with you. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Good luck. Cheers.
Nice chatting, Geoff.
You too.
Well, Benchmates, that's episode 17 coming to a close. We'd just like to say a big thank you to our sponsors, Ammo by Mig Jimenez, Fishcop Model Company, Guideline Publications, The Scale Modelling Supply, and Phase Hanger Resin Accessories for their support to help bring the show to you. With that, have a fantastic Christmas. So, from Mark.
Have a great Christmas, everybody.
Spencer.
Merry Christmas, everybody, and remember, drink responsibly.
Nevs.
Bye, everyone, and I hope you all have a very happy Christmas.
Martin.
Have a wonderful, happy, peaceful Christmas with love from snowy Utah.
Dan.
Merry Christmas, Benchmates. I hope you all get some quality bench time.
And from Geoff.
If you celebrate Christmas, I wish you a very happy Christmas, and thank you. Take this opportunity to thank everybody who supported us and continues to do so. Thanks, guys.
And from myself, thank you for listening. Follow our socials for what's coming out over Christmas, as we're not taking a break. We're going to keep you company, and we're even going to try and do a live modelling bench time chat sometime between Christmas and the New Year. So keep an eye on what we're doing. For now, enjoy your Christmas, spend time with the family, and have a grand peaceful time. Bye-bye.
Snow on the cutting mat, glue on our hands, sprues in the corner, unbuilt plans. The stash is growing, the wife just sighs. There's no way that's fitting under the tree, she cries. The airbrush hums like a winter tune, decals drying way past noon. From tiny ships to wings of war, there's plastic dreams on every floor. Late nights, bench lights glowing low. One more kit, then off we go. It's beyond the box art Christmas time, where passion beats perfection, every single line. From From the bench to the booth, from the laughs to the art, we don't just build models, we build from the heart. So raise a mug of extra thin to have finished kits and battles we didn't win. Through sprues and laughs and festive cheer, beyond the box art, Christmas is here. Painted fingers, lost photo etch. Where did that tiny part even get? A podcast playing in the background hum, talking kids history and what's yet to come. Now put the kettle on, check the stash, and don't tell anyone what that kid cost. Airbrush hums like a winter tune, decals drying way past noon. From tiny ships to wings of war, there's plastic dreams on every floor.